This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Let's get it going. Big day on the show today. And a big night because the Jets are finally back in action. All of you that have been finding something else to do for the last 9 days, good news. We got hockey tonight. Jets in Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Penguins, who will be here on Saturday night at home as the teams play their two games in relatively short order against each other for the schedule. But even more noteworthy, the expected debut of Sean Monahan of the Winnipeg Jets, who was acquired on the weekend in a trade from the Montreal Canadiens. Mike McIntyre is in the Steel City. He'll join us a little later on. And we'll also talk about trades, the Monahan deal, the Lindholm deal, and many other top stories around the National Hockey League with Stephen Whyno coming up in just a few minutes. A little later on, it is Super Bowl week. We cannot ignore the big game. It was the craziness of media night last night at Reliance Stadium. And we'll talk a little bit about the big game, as well as a little golf. PGA Live, our guy Aaron Cockrell, who's having a great year on the DP Tour, with my man Geoff Fienberg, a WST favorite, a little later on in the program. But we're going to kick it off with some big Bomber news in just a minute. Before we do that and bring in Michael Remis, welcome to everyone that's with us live on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that thumbs up. And if you're finding us on YouTube, make sure to search Winnipeg Sports Talk wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and we'll make sure that the audio content is available for you right after the program. If you are doing a regular 9 to 5-ish job, be ready for your to listen to on your ride home from work, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Big thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Coolbet Canada just finished a lock shop, having major FOMO right now. Dusty and the EST gang are down in Vegas for the big Oilers Knights game tonight. But we got into all the hockey. You can check that out later on at the Edmonton Sports Talk channel. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, the Winnipeg Jets, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, tons of Chiefs gear coming in for the big game. You Chiefs fans, if you want to get done up for Sunday. Niners too, Boston Pizza, Sport Manitoba, and Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. Of course, Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Modern Man, Manitoba Battery, and the Great Taste of Canadian Club. Speaking of Canadian Club, I'm not sure whether those last 4 tickets went or not, but if you haven't already and you want to join us on February 29th for that special masterclass whiskey tasting event at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, where we'll also be watching the Jets in Dallas, do not wait. Get to winnipegsportstalk.com/whiskey or the link in the description for those final 4 tickets for the event. There's Remis is showing it to you right there. As I said, I imagine if those aren't gone already, they will be probably in the next 24 hours. So jump on them and join us on February 29th. Let's get Remo in here. And Remo, as I mentioned, I thought we'd be really focusing on hockey today, but big breaking news from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Brady Oliveira's back.
Yeah, the Bombers tweeting it out. Brady Oliveira's back. That's been the big talk. Brady or Schoen, which one is it going to be? Could it be both? But it is Brady Oliveira signing a 2-year deal, so we don't have to do this conversation again next year. Farhan Lalji reporting he's going to make $230,000 this year and $240,000 next year. And yesterday it was Yoshi Hardrick, agreeing to terms with Saskatchewan. Today Brady Oliveira staying with the Bombers. And I'm not sure what else is on the horizon here for the blue and gold, but a huge move. I mean, he was the most outstanding player nominee. He carried the ball more than anyone by a big margin. A hometown guy. I mean, he's a franchise player, great representative of Winnipeg, great player on the field as well. Great to have him back. A lot of people excited, and you can have the conversation. Maybe running backs are a bit replaceable. We've seen that in the NFL, just with the market there. The running backs getting upset, but I mean, he means so much to this team, so much to the city. It would feel weird, Huss, to see him on another club. And also, the Bombers have kind of tailored their roster over the last, since Andrew Harris, to have a Canadian at running back, for in terms of the ratio. So they're set with him and Johnny Augustine now at running back. So big news.
And let's not forget about Chris Streveler. I mean, Streveler, I think, takes the Bomber running game to another level, and it already was elite with Brady Oliveira in the backfield, getting 2,000 combined yards last year. Listen, I will admit I have a little bit of sticker shock considering the numbers that you just rolled out. I saw it earlier at 3 Down Nation. I thought it was about 200, and I thought that, okay, 230 and 240 is a big, big number. But, hey, the young man earned it. When you are, in a lot of people's minds, the most outstanding player in the entire league, guess what? You're going to have a lot of interest in you, and you are going to get a big raise. He did it. It makes a lot of sense for him to stay here and keep things going in Winnipeg. Of course, the team having won 4 straight Western Division championships, looking to make it 5. And the significance of the 2-year deal includes next season, which, of course, is a big one for the Bombers as they will be hosting the Grey Cup. So I will admit I didn't know whether the Bombers could get that high with Brady Oliveira. But maybe knowing that Yoshi Hardrick is gone and they were assuming to maybe fortify the line, certainly you got a big hole at that position with Yoshi apparently going to the Riders. But the guy in the backfield, a big, big part of everything the Bombers did offensively last year, back. And I'm in particular excited, I mentioned this yesterday, to see what Buck Pierce might have cooking next year for offenses that include Brady Oliveira and Chris Streveler on the field at the same time. But hey, listen, it's a great day. I think fans are going to be really excited. I remember last week, Reem, when we did the Why Not question of the day for Not AutoCorp, we asked folks here in the chat, if it came down to one or the other, Schoen or Oliveira, who are you signing? And it was 59% for Brady. And I think that speaks to just how difficult of a decision it was, but also the fact of the season he had, the hometown roots, the Canadian passport, which helps the ratio. So this is going to be a popular re-signing and an important one for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, and in terms of play calling, Geoff mentioned this yesterday. I forgot they had revised the rules to allow 2 quarterbacks on the field at the same time, something you couldn't do in Streveler's first go-around with the Bombers. So maybe they do have some big wrinkles in terms of play calling, and big signing for the Bombers. And we've talked about the running back market. Right after he signed, he seemed to be the first domino to fall. The Saskatchewan Roughriders signing A.J. Ouellette, formerly with the Argos, or expected to sign. That's the terminology you have to use because this is the legal tampering period. But Oliveira setting the market. He made a bit of a raise for him with all his incentives. That last year he made $120,000 according to 3 Down Nation. He reached incentives for rushing yards, all-star selection, and awards. And yes, $230K in 24, and next 25, $240K. So great season for him. 260 rushes, 1,534 yards. That's 5.9 yards a carry. Basically, getting a first down every 2 carries. It's exceptional. 9 touchdowns. Also good. I thought he was pretty good in the receiving game as well as the season went on. 38 catches, 482 yards, and 4 touchdowns. One of only 2 Canadian running backs in league history to reach 2,000 yards from scrimmage, and he was the West most outstanding player, which we debated quite a bit on this program, who was the Bombers' most outstanding player. So, congratulations to him. Currently, in Bali, rescuing dogs and making deals. Thing. So, and we know what great work he does in the community as well, Brady Oliveira.
Oh, yeah. Which reminds me of a tweet I made last night. We found the biggest loser on Twitter yesterday. There's always one guy. This bozo, Jonathan Keane Therian. Can you imagine what a virtue signaler you have to be to drop this tweet at 3Down Nation, which was an article on Brady, the decision coming up and where he's been in Bali for 2 months helping rescuing dogs. Like, where does this come from? Ha ha ha, rescuing dogs in Bali for 2 months. That is wonderful and heartwarming and impossible not to laugh at the absurd, privileged cliche of it. Seriously, not cynical, but that is a certain sign of the era we are in, that such a vacation is teamed with such a charity. Like, let me get this straight. Someone's getting heat for doing charity work on their holidays? Like, dude, I think you probably got bigger battles to fight. White knighting for whatever you are on Twitter. I had to put that out, and he's getting dragged a little bit, as he should. But anyone that knows anything about Brady Oliveira knows that in his spare time, when he's not kicking ass wearing number 20 in blue, he's doing incredible things when it comes to pet rescues. I don't think anyone was saying that about him when he was going to Northern Manitoba Reserves on his bye week last year. Just guys to show the quality of a person that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have and the city has, and the hometown guy is staying at home. One other thing, Reem, on the Oliveira deal, I have a feeling we talked about how many running backs were available, like top running backs from last year. And we knew Brady was the top one, certainly had the highest asking price. I think everyone was waiting, as Geoff said, to maybe set the market. But it didn't take long for another domino to fall. We're getting reports that my second choice at running back after Oliveira, AJ Ouellette from the Toronto Argonauts, apparently has a deal to go to the Riders in Saskatchewan. So big couple days for agreements, assuming everything, is signed, sealed, and delivered at the finish line for Ouellette and Jamarcus Hardrick for a team that had plenty of holes to fill.
Yeah, Jamal Morrow now was the running back before in Saskatchewan. I'm curious where he signed. Does he end up in Toronto and you have a little running back musical chairs? So the CFL legal tampering period where guys are signing agreements that they will sign when it opens next week. This has been kind of fun to get this CFL discussion. I think it gets you excited for the season when it starts, in the spring/summer. So I think we're kind of over, we're shaking off that Grey Cup hangover and starting to get more excited for the season as, we had the Strevler signing last week, Brady this week, and we'll have to see what more comes for the blue and gold as we move on here.
I am preparing myself to hear at some point that Dalton Schoen is not going to be a Blue Bomber next year.
You're ready for it?
Well, I think, think of everyone that we've talked about in the know. And we talked to Geoff yesterday and said that it would be incredibly difficult to picture the Bombers being able to sign both of these players. And when you hear the reported number that Brady got from the Bombers, reported by Farhan Lalji in $230 this year, $240 next year, for a receiver that absolutely deserves to be paid near the top of the food chain in the Canadian Football League, I just don't know how that works. I think he'd have to really, really want to come back here, stay playing with Zach Collaros, and probably take a little bit less to come to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And as we've talked about, man, these careers are short. You have very few opportunities like Dalton Schoen has now to maximize your earning potential. And I don't think anyone will begrudge him if he goes elsewhere. Sure would be nice to keep him, though. But I think Bomber fans need to be prepared that, we saw Jamarcus Hardrick leave earlier this week. We knew these were the two priority guys. Listen, for the record, I'm not putting it past Kyle Walters. We've seen him weave some magic beforehand, and I guess until we hear otherwise, that is still a possibility. But as I said, I'm preparing myself for some bad news about Schoen at some point, knowing what the Bombers are laying out to Brady.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way the team is. You have Kenny Lawler making big money. You have Nick Dembski signed. Drew Wolodarski's back, and just the way that the salary structure was before, Dalton Schoen was on a rookie deal, and they basically hit gold. Finding this receiver, from Kansas who came in and all of a sudden is the best receiver in the league, and it almost reminds me of when Kenny Lawler left a couple years ago for the big money in Edmonton. Now that didn't work out for them, but and he ended up coming back. But can the Bombers afford Dalton Schoen? Big question. And you have to hope they can find another American receiver who could. I don't know. It's gonna be. I don't know if you can replicate that. I mean, they literally hit a. It was jackpot there. Finding him, and what? Credit to the Bombers, but that's gonna be tough to keep him. And we just say, hey, a great couple years here, and hopefully they can find a way, but it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, if he's gone, it's going to be, listen, this is already going to be a time where the Bombers are going to lean on Danny Mack and Ted Gavaya to come up with some more gems to come to the Canadian Football League and hopefully produce for the Bombers at less than veteran salaries to fit it all in under the cap. So that's the big news. John Hodge is going to join us tomorrow. We'll talk more about the offseason, free agent tampering period, what's been reported so far, as well as who is still out on the market, and focus on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers when he joins us tomorrow. But Remo, the Jets are back, as I mentioned right off the top, in Pittsburgh tonight to take on the Penguins. Mark Scheifele is in, and that means we have a player on waivers. We knew it was coming. Axel Jonsson-Fjallby, the guy put on waivers by the Winnipeg Jets today. I know the organization and many Jet fans will cross their fingers that he's able to clear. And I guess that means Toninato right now is still technically with the club, awaiting the official activation of David Gustafsson at some point. But someone had to go with Scheifele getting back onto the roster, and Axel is that guy.
Yeah, is Axel still counting? Is last in, first out from last year's waiver pickup? And, we had speculated that it was going to be Toninato because he's been skating as a defenseman the last couple skates. He was paired with Stanley today, yesterday as well, but no, Axel going down. And I know he was already on waivers once this year. He spent some time with the Moose, so we'll see what happens. He was the only player in the league on waivers. The other one is the Rangers putting Nick Bonino on waivers for purpose of contract termination, but Axel going. Yeah, that was the other 1 o'clock.
Bonino is getting cut loose.
I mean, it's been a while since that, and he's a veteran center. I wonder if some team will pick him. I keep joking, all these teams pick up veteran players. Edmonton getting Corey Perry, Avs getting Zach Parise. Who else is going to make a late season signing? But yeah, Axel going down, and he actually did some pretty good work. Went in the lineup with Barron and Toninato. They had a great stretch there, and the Jets have a lot of players, and someone had to go down to activate Mark Scheifele, and Axel's the guy. And here's the lines for today. Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Perfetti, Monahan, Ehlers, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, Barron, Nemestikov, Iafallo, Morrissey, DeMello, Dylan Pionk, Sandberg, Schmidt, and Hellebuck starting in goal. And I think they were saying this is the healthiest they've been since game one. And you finally get this Connor, Scheifele, Velarde line together, which that line before Velarde's injury was cooking. So they were one of the top lines in the league, and you hope they can recreate that magic. Kyle Connor, he's going to be more fully recovered from his knee injury before. And hey, a bit of a homecoming for him. I know he's played in Pittsburgh before, but he did play junior in Youngstown. So I think all eyes, though, on this Perfetti, Monahan, Ehlers, and it was an optional skate. I guess Rick Bowness saying every skate is an optional skate, and Sean Monahan was the only player not out there.
I was a little rattled when I saw that, to be honest. I'm getting the reports. I'm like, everyone's out there except Kapari's and Monahan's spot. I guess we'll find out a little bit more about that maybe after the game. But the bottom line is, and we may as well get to this right now and hear from Bones, a bit of an update from this morning. And the first question that Mike and the gang asked, obviously, was, where's that guy you just traded for on the weekend? Here's Bones on Sean Monahan not skating this morning.
None. I told the guys this morning, I don't care if they morning skate anymore from here on out or not. I was surprised as many guys went out as they did. So no, from here on out, like this time of the year, after 2 days of practice, we don't have to have a morning skate, but if they feel they need to go, that's fine. Sean obviously didn't feel he needed to go, and I told him, listen, if you don't ever have a morning skate, I'm fine with that. Again, like practice Monday, Tuesday, or 2 days in a row, but they all wanted to go, so you got to let them go.
Sean Monahan, maybe just not a morning skate guy, Reem.
I was thinking back to it. Like he said, it's like, where were you? Where was Sean Monahan when he heard about the Sean Monahan trade? Well, he was just waking up, and he was in Florida. That's on the East Coast. I think I got the alert. Well, I'm sure he heard before, but the first Pierre LeBrun tweets were around 10 o'clock. Was he waking up at 11 to Pierre LeBrun tweets? Maybe he's just not a morning guy. So I don't know the exact timeline when the insiders break trades and how far after that actually happens. But I was thinking about that when he said yesterday or Sunday. Yeah, I was just waking up and heard about it, and he was on the East Coast, so I don't know.
He was on the break, so listen. Maybe he was just maybe he was having some fun. It's when I'm off, it would not be unusual at all to not be up and around that time. So that being said, I'm not a pro athlete, but listen, the bottom line is when they were out skating today, it just seemed a little strange that everyone was out there except Monahan. But nothing to worry about. He will be in the lineup tonight, and we will get to the Coolbet lines a little later on. But if you are interested in maybe a little new guy luck, plus 420 to score a goal tonight for Monahan over at Coolbet. And, of course, he's going to be playing with Ehlers and Perfetti, and he'll be on the Jets' #1 power play. I think when the bookies realize where he's fitting into the lineup, we will not be seeing lines like that. And just a little tip, I may have a Monahan goal involved in a little WST parlay that we'll talk about later on the program. But listen, it's back after the All-Star game, and it's time to push to the playoffs. Bones talk about the games getting harder after the break, and his team need to be ready for it.
Tonight's a perfect example. Pittsburgh has to start winning some games to get back in the playoff picture. There's going to be a lot of those games, and it's more now a battle for positioning, both to get in and keep your position where you are. So the games get tougher. They get tougher to score. Really, everyone buttons down a little harder defensively. So that's really where the focal point will be on everyone. Just keep the puck out of your net, play tougher D. But every game, and again, we got Pittsburgh twice, and we got Philly this Thursday, so they're fighting to keep on their spot they have. So that's the type of situation you're going to see most nights now.
All right, there's a little bit more bones on the situation and the opponents, desperate opponents like the Pittsburgh Penguins they'll be facing tonight. Bones talked a little bit about Kyle Connor, KFC, of course, you mentioned, back with Mark Scheifele and Gabe Balharry on the Jets' top line. Came back from injury. Didn't score too much. Here's Bones on Kyle Connor's goal scoring.
He's an elite goal scorer. He's an elite skater. He's an elite player. He really is. He's huge to our team in a lot of ways. But when he gets the puck, he's backing the other team off because of his speed, and they respect his speed. They respect his quickness in the O-zone when he starts cutting back. So he brings a lot to the table for us, but he's elite with everything that he does offensively.
And I think this is probably from the Pittsburgh crew as well. But we're talking about waivers and Axel being on waivers. A former Jet that landed in Pittsburgh, courtesy of waivers, is Jansen Harkins. Bones was asked about Hark as well this morning.
He gets an opportunity. He's a great kid, and he's a great teammate. He works hard, comes to the rink every day with a great attitude and good work habits, and again, being a good teammate. So that you want that. You want those guys that have to fight their way into the spot. You want them to be rewarded. So I'm happy for him. He deserves it. Again, he's a great kid, good teammate, good worker. He's just a real good pro.
All right, so there's Bones with some kind words for former Winnipeg Jet Jansen Harkins. Nikolai Ehlers will be skating on a line with Cole Perfetti, and now the new guy, as Rick Ralph used to say, Sean Monahan in the middle. Ehlers spoke this morning about coming back from the break and being on a line with the latest acquisition of the Jets.
The break was much needed, I think, for all of us in here. With the schedule that we have, it's you don't get a lot of rest. So having 6 days to kind of get some energy back, get the body feeling a little better is huge. So we're all ready and excited to get it going again.
You had a whopping 2 skates with Sean Monahan in the middle and wasn't out there for the morning skate. But just curious how you kind of seen things come together over the first couple of days with him in the middle there.
It's been easy, to be honest. He's a very smart player, very skilled. He's got some great passing, can shoot. So he reads the game really well, and you know, I think for me and for Fets, it's a matter of finding the open spaces that he can lay it into, and we skate. So it's been really good. It's been exciting, and he's a great player, obviously.
All right, there's Nikolai Ehlers on Monahan, and coming back from the break. And here's one more quick clip from Ehlers on tonight's opponent, Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I mean, they're obviously a really good team. They have their core pieces together that, you know, have played together for a long time now, and anytime you can get that, it's pretty exciting for a team. And you know, they're just out of it right now, but you know, the skill and the way that these guys can play. So you know, first game for both teams after the break, and we're pretty excited. So we got to go out and get the 2 points.
All right, there's a refreshed Nick Ehlers looking forward to taking to the ice with his new line mate Sean Monahan for the first time. We'll talk about that deal, a couple deals in the league, as well as a bunch of the other big stories around the National Hockey League in just a second. Coming up with Stephen Whyno of the AP. I mentioned it right off the top, gang, but just 2 or 4 seats left for the Canadian Whiskey Masterclass that we're doing with our great sponsors at Canadian Club and the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival. It is February 29th at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. It'll be doubling up as a whiskey class, whiskey tasting, and we'll be watching the Winnipeg Jets and Dallas Stars go at it from Dallas on a big screen with big sound. So if you haven't already, it's in the description of this video. If you're listening to the podcast, go to winnipegsportstalk.com, click on whiskey, and grab those last couple of pairs of tickets to make sure you don't miss out. Of course, Canadian Club looking forward to hosting many WSTers, as well as being a big part of the upcoming Winnipeg Whiskey Festival. You can find out more online on the Whiskey Festival and the other events in and around it. A shout out to our friends at Manitoba Battery. February is here, and we're now just days away from the official new grand opening of the new Manitoba Battery location over on Dovercourt in the South Side. You know, Manitoba Battery is the #1 place go-to for batteries, where you can shop local and get the best prices in town, period, beating the pants off the big box stores. And not only will you get the best price, but you won't even need to leave your house. You can order online at manitobabattery.com or give them a call at 783-8787. Donnie and the gang will deliver your batteries to you anywhere in the city of Winnipeg for free with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. So stay tuned for grand opening specials and sales at the new location when it opens later on this month. But in the meantime, for all your battery needs, go to manitobabattery.com. And of course, you can visit them at their current location at 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, gang, if you're looking to, good coming into the new year, you got to pop by Modern Man Barber Shops. And it's not hard to do. Conveniently located with 8 locations around Winnipeg, including their 2 new locations on Pembina Highway right by Bishop or Plessis Road out on the east side. Modern Man's got you covered, guys, with a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. You can book your look and make an appointment via modernmanbarber.com. And give him a follow on the gram as well at Modern Man Barbershops. And just before we bring in Stephen Whyno and talk a little Jets, Penguins, and more NHL, don't forget the Jets are back at home against these same Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday night in the home debut of Sean Monahan. Grab your tickets if you haven't already. Looking forward to a great crowd Saturday night down at Canada Life Center. Go to winnipegjets.com not only for Saturday, but for the Valentine's Day game. Might be a great date night, fellas. With your special someone next Wednesday on February 14th. and the much anticipated February 20th match against the Minnesota Wild. Tickets on sale at jets.com/tickets. While you're at it, check out what they've got going on for smaller packages and to get back into season tickets. And of course, grab your playoff tickets ahead of the general public with that. All right, let's talk some pucks. Lots going on around the league coming out of the All-Star break. And our pal, the national AP hockey writer, Stephen Whyno, joins us. Not just the AP writer, but also the author of the eBug book, Odd Man In, Hockey's Emergency Goalies and the Wildest One-Day Job in Sports. Check that out wherever you get your books. Whyno, what's going on? How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am well. I'm looking forward to watching the Jets get back on the ice tonight. I mean, it's been such a great first half plus for Winnipeg, albeit not a great final week getting into the break. I think it came at a really good time. But all eyes on Pittsburgh tonight for Jet fans to see Sean Monahan's debut in the middle of Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti. Let me ask you about last week. I mean, I don't know if we've traditionally seen many significant deals happen during the All-Star break. What was your reaction to Vancouver's acquisition of Lindholm, and then the Winnipeg Jets diving right in after that to get one of the other rental, if you want to call it that, centers on the market?
Yeah, well, the arms race is on in the West, right? I mean, you got two of the top teams in the NHL making deals. And it reminded me a little bit of Bo Horvat when the Canucks traded him to the Islanders just before the All-Star break, the same day of the year last year going into All-Star weekend. Also an All-Star player, just like Elias Lindholm. And it seems like GMs want to get a jump on the trade deadline now. That really it's March 8th, but we saw this last year where there were major deals happening the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, to where there were almost no guys left by the Friday of deadline week. And you're talking to Rick Bowness and Rick Tocchet over the weekend. They prefer getting these players in early. Sean Monahan and Elias Lindholm getting now really 2 full months, 2.5 months really, until the playoffs to get acclimated with a group. That Rick Tocchet said you really want to have your team or know what your team is by 2 months before the end of the season. So actually, I think it's the start of a domino effect that we're going to be seeing a lot more trades earlier in kind of the trade deadline season than we usually do.
I think part of the deal, I mean, it was very clear, and maybe the Scheifele injury came at a time where it just put a magnifying glass on the number one need for the Winnipeg Jets, and that was to fortify the center position with Pierre-Luc Dubois going and no centers coming back in the deal. And I'll be honest, I didn't think, if you'd asked me 2-3 weeks ago, I didn't think the Habs would get a first rounder for Monahan. But when I saw what Vancouver paid for Lindholm, and you realize, you look around and there's not a lot of other options, especially at under $2 million, which allows the Winnipeg Jets to do other things. It sort of makes sense. And it was a great time and a great piece of business for the Habs, who, of course, got a first rounder to originally take Monahan from the Calgary Flames a few years ago.
Yeah, and really the Lindholm trade did set the market on a kind of a rental elite level center. And Sean Monahan, even with his injury history, the way he's playing this season on, I don't want to say underachieving, but a rebuilding Canadians kind of roster here, that it does make a lot of sense for the Jets and for the Canadians, because how do you get through the playoffs in the West? You need to be able to have centers to match up with the likes of the Golden Knights, the Canucks, the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars. And Mark Scheifele is a number one center, but if he does go down, having a little bit of backup does help. And it didn't seem like just the Scheifele injury kind of made the reason for this deal to happen. I think the Lindholm trade kind of brought an urgency to this, knowing that Mark Scheifele is expected back playing tonight and all those sort of things. But knowing that there are limited options, as you mentioned, on the market, I think these centers are going to go fast and furious, whether it's the top line guys like Elias Lindholm and maybe a half a step down to Sean Monahan, but even to someone like Scott Lawton, Nick Dowd. There are going to be a lot of centers going quickly, and the Jets really did a good job, I think, Kevin Cheveldayoff did, of jumping on one of the top options available. Because when Monahan's been healthy this season, and he has been healthy, he's an excellent, productive player.
Yeah, well, I mean, he ticks off a couple boxes that Rick Bowness definitely wanted. A guy that can be better in the face-off than any of the Jets centermen at this point, which is such a priority for him, especially in high-leverage moments. And to hopefully help kick the power play going, which is kind of crazy. The Jets are sitting here with 30 wins going into the second half when you look at their struggles on special teams this year. But it speaks to just how good they've been at 5-on-5. Just on that, I mean, from afar, What have you noticed about Winnipeg, and how are you as surprised as others are that the Jets are right there battling with Colorado and Dallas for the top of the Central Division and the top of the West with Vancouver?
I'm pleasantly surprised because I think kind of where my expectations were set for the season came before the Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck extensions, where you don't know where this team's going to go, whether a rebuild is coming and all those sort of things. And as soon as those deals happened and you knew Hellebuyck and Scheifele were going to be around long term, there's no underestimating, or you'd be foolish to underestimate Rick Bowness as a coach. He took over the Dallas Stars in 2019 and in the bubble guided them to the Stanley Cup final. He is an experienced seasoned coach who knows how to get the most out of his talent. And when you have Josh Morrissey playing at a top level, and you've got Mark Scheifele playing at a top level, and Kyle Connor scoring at that as well, and you got Connor Hellebuyck, who's probably going to win the Vezina Trophy. This is a team that deserves to be among the NHL's elite. I think I believe in the sustainability of the Jets more than I believe in the sustainability of the Canucks. And that's nothing against Rick Tocchet, Thatcher Demko, and Elias Paterson, and all the All-Stars with Vancouver. But the style of hockey the Jets can play, that they can win close games, that they can also score and have guys who can score that one goal you need in a playoff series, that the Jets are built for playing hockey in the springtime. And it's fascinating to see how well they're churning along, at least until this last stretch without Mark Scheifele, obviously, before the break, churning along and being able to kind of keep a consistent level to their game, which is how you win in the playoffs.
Whyno, I know you spent a fun weekend out in Toronto. Just quickly, just observations of the event. I thought the skills competition knocked it out of the park, and I imagine that will continue in that format going forward when they do get back to the All-Star. But what were the takeaways from the weekend overall from your perspective?
It was really fun. And I think the Thursday night, adding the extra night worked really well. You had the player draft, you had the celebrity element with Justin Bieber and Tate McRae and Will Arnett and Michael Bublé, and the women's 3-on-3 game. It kind of adds an extra night to the festivities. I liked that a lot. And you're right, the skills competition was a home run. It was Connor McDavid and Steve Mayer from the NHL and a lot of their players kind of coming together and saying, let's get back to the basics of here's how you play hockey. And it was fun. A couple of the events maybe need to get tweaked a little bit and slowed and kind of speed up the pace of it slightly. But if you're buying a ticket to that event, if you're watching that on TV, I don't feel like you wasted your time, your money doing it. I think the players, for the most part, enjoyed being part of it. I think in the future, maybe letting guys choose who wants to be a part of it rather than doing some sort of vote, and having guys who are interested in kind of wanting to be part of that rather than just partying in Toronto during your kind of all-star break. But even the 3-on-3 tournament on Saturday was a win. I mean, it ended up with the Toronto guys and that team setting the hometown crowd home happy, but still there was entertainment to it. Once guys started really caring, which you could sense like midway through those first two games, it was fun to watch. I mean, it's hockey happening in slow motion a little bit because it's the all-star festivities and all that. But yeah, it worked, and it'll be interesting to see how things are tweaked for this next event in 2026 leading up to the Milan Olympics.
I mean, one of the other great thing about, having the event there in Toronto is so many of the media get together. I mean, we were just talking about the Monahan deals and the Elias Lindholm deals. I know what people are going to want to know. I mean, what were the conversations with the other media like, and what are you hearing percolating around the league as it pertains to the trade market across the NHL?
It was a lot of kind of people checking their phones as guys kind of were all out on Wednesday night being like, oh no, I got to go right. And obviously trades happening. And then all of a sudden the Monahan trade happens and I'm out at another event. It's like, okay, I'll write this in between covering the Commanders hiring their new coach too. So it was a busy weekend on that front. But a lot of the conversation was just Nathan McKinnon bringing up he would like the trade deadline coming earlier. He would like to see it moved up sort of closer to where the NBA is. And there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot. I mentioned Nick Dowd and Scott Lawton earlier. Those are two of the guys who clearly could be moved before the deadline. I'm here in Washington, and Charlie Lindgren, Nick Dowd, a handful of defensemen, anyone not nailed down basically with the Capitals probably on the move. The New York Rangers are certainly interested, Chris Drury, in making a move. And is there one kind of major cup favorite at this point? And there really isn't. I think some of the things that everyone's been talking about is just how wide open it is and how many different combinations of a cup final you could imagine. And even going into the playoffs last year, I don't know a whole lot of people who would have bet on a Vegas, Florida Stanley Cup final. We're sitting here now few months away from that, and you could pick any number of combinations of the teams ending up in the Cup final or who wins the Stanley Cup, and knowing that could lead to a very interesting next month or so until the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to favorites, I mean, it's follow the money, right? Now, just pulling up the Coolbet lines here. I mean, not surprisingly, there's a lot of steam on the Edmonton Oilers right now, considering they're on a 16-game heater and have completely turned around their season after that horrible start. They're at plus 625. The Avalanche next at plus 850. And then you've got the Bruins at 10, Panthers, Canes at 12, Rangers, Stars 13, Jets, Knights at 15, Leafs at 16. I mean, there really is some semblance of parity, and I think an argument that you can be made for literally every team I just mentioned, why they could be moving to the Stanley Cup final and potentially being the last team standing.
Yeah, and when you mention like over 6-1 is the favorite to win, is usually not where we're sitting at here, and that's very surprising. I mean, you probably couldn't have gotten those odds on your Chiefs Super Bowl a few weeks ago either. But this is a wide open from even a playoff race standpoint. Like you look at the Seattle Kraken, Nashville Predators, St. Louis Blues in the West of just getting in, and kind of what we saw the Panthers do getting into the playoffs as an 8 seed in the East last year. I wouldn't bet against the Boston Bruins at this point either. I mean, this is a team that even without Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci and not chasing this record now, also have a stellar coach in Jim Montgomery, someone who was also at the All-Star game, and Peter Laviolette and the Rangers. And you could talk yourself into a lot of different teams. But as you mentioned, like you go to Coolbet, you can find some significant value if there are teams you like at 12, 13, 14, 15-1.
No doubt about it. Stephen Whyno's with us from the AP here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Well, we just talked about the teams that are contenders, that might be buyers. As we get into this post-All-Star break period, heading into the deadline, I mean, I'm just looking at the standings right now. You know, the Leafs and the Wings are holding down those final two playoff spots. The Islanders got a big win last night. They're 4 back. We're going to see Pittsburgh tonight. Now, Pittsburgh is 7 points back, but they do have 4 games in hand on Detroit, which is important. And Jersey and Washington also 3 games in hand at 51. And then over in the West, I mean, Nashville is right there, although they played a couple extra games. The Kings and Blues are in the wild card. But Kraken, Coyotes, Minnesota Wild, the Flames have already sold. Is there, of that group that I mentioned, which teams do you think might be willing to say, all right, this isn't our year, and maybe get a little bit more active when it comes to moving players for assets and things that might help them beyond this year if they're not going to be a playoff team?
Yeah, Calgary's the start of that list already, beginning the selling process. I wouldn't be surprised if they're listening to teams interested in Jacob Markstrom, given how it looks like a retooling, rebuilding process is underway for the Flames, that there are plenty of teams out there in need of goaltending help, whether that's Toronto, New Jersey. I think the Devils are going to be buying, looking for some help on depth on defense and in goal. The Capitals are definitely a team that, unless they go on a heater in the next few weeks, and their schedule coming up is after the Canadiens tonight, at Florida, at Boston, home against Vancouver, home against Colorado. It is a brutal stretch for the Capitals coming up. And Brian McClellan saw this similar stretch last year where the Capitals lost a bunch of games in a row and just sold off like crazy. It would not surprise me if the same thing happens now, where the Capitals are wide open for business on just about any player on the roster. If you want to make a trade for Nick Jensen, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Joel Edmondson, who's a free agent, Anthony Mantha might even get some value for the Capitals at this point. Evgeny Kuznetsov's now in the player assistance program, and they're kind of in a stretch now where, unless they win a bunch of games, I could see Brian McLeod and the Capitals being one of the more active sellers of anyone out there. The interesting team I'm looking at, Hustler, is the Philadelphia Flyers and Danny Briere, with Carter Hart now on leave and charged in London, Ontario. And this team could fall like a lead weight out of it. Scott Lawton could be available. Nick Seeler, Sean Walker, there's Mark Stahl. There's a bunch of guys the Flyers have who, if Danny Briere moves into selling mode, can really set that team up for winning 2, 3, 4 years from now.
Well, you know what, and we'll get to the overall story coming out of London yesterday, but in particular with Philly, knowing that Carter Hart's not going to be there for the rest of this season. They'd been honestly one of the best stories in the league so far this year, a team that no one expected to be in a playoff spot, still there, but they lost 5 in a row. I don't think they've won since Carter Hart left the team. Is this sort of the clock striking 12 on the season for the Philadelphia Flyers?
And really, it was before Carter Hart left. And there was a game against Colorado they had at home where Carter Hart played and had one of his worst games of the season. But you could see kind of things falling apart before that it was unsustainable. How, as good as John Tortorella job has done with this team, that it wasn't, with the lack of elite talent there and just the talent discrepancy against some of these better teams, it looked like a little bit of smoke and mirrors that lasted longer than I think a lot of us thought would last in Philadelphia. But yeah, I do think unless Samuel Ersson and Felix Sandstrom or Cal Peterson turn out to be able to carry the load down the stretch these last 30-some games for the Flyers, it's hard to imagine Philadelphia holding on to that third spot in the Metropolitan Division. It felt like at least a year ahead of schedule, if not more, for the Flyers, and it's starting to look like, unfortunately for them, that's going to happen.
Hey, just before we get to the big story or the Hockey Canada stuff, we were talking Caps. I can't not ask you about Ovi. I think he was rocking in Dubai over the course of the break. He's got 9 goals. Where is he at right now this season? And what is a very, very slow for Alex Ovechkin standards season so far done to the story that everyone associates with him, the chase for Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to envision Alex Ovechkin catching Wayne Gretzky's record and breaking that record at this point, just because Father Time is undefeated. Like every athlete, every great hockey player eventually gets older. And Alex Ovechkin's not a bad player, right? Okay, he's still a really good hockey player for 38 years old. But when you watch him, he looks like a 38-year-old hockey player. And to the point where you say 38-year-old scores 17 goals in a season. For anybody else other than Alex Ovechkin, that's pretty good. But when he had to probably put up 30 goals this season to really be on that pace, the math's getting really hard. The time, he's got 2 years left on his current contract. Who knows if he'll extend past that to try to chase the record. But he would have to score, if he scores 15 to 20 goals this season, he's probably going to have to double that next year to really have a legitimate chance of that. And it's very hard to envision 39, 40-year-old players, even as good as Alex Ovechkin, putting up that kind of numbers at that age.
Stephen, yesterday in London, we heard the press conference from the London police with details on the sexual assault charges to the 5 players from that 2018. Obviously, when we're talking about something like this, your first thoughts need to be with the victim, and that was very clear yesterday that is what London police were putting forward. From a hockey standpoint, what is the future for these players? And I guess we heard yesterday that the teams are actually going to get cap relief. You could maybe touch on that and what that means for this season. But with all of these players, I don't think coincidentally having expiring contracts at the end of this year, are the 4 players that were playing in the National Hockey League probably done, if not for good, for a very long time playing in North America?
It sure seems like it. And obviously, there are bigger deals here than hockey. Then this kind of case is going to go on. And as the London Police Chief said, this is not about hockey. This is about a crime that's been investigated and charges that have been laid against 5 men who are alleged to have done something. From a hockey standpoint, yes, confirmed with Bill Daly last night that all these teams involved, the Devils, Flyers, and Flames, will get cap relief for these players' salaries. And I think one of the reasons why Gary Bettman was unlikely or unwilling to issue a suspensions in this case was he is satisfied with these guys are away from their teams. We know with the trial backlog in Canada that this may take a while to even get to trial. The next court date for these players is set for April 30th. That is after the end of the regular season. And with all of these players on expiring contracts, there is the expectation that none of them are going to be tendered, re-signed, all of those things. So for all intents and purposes, these players are away. Even if suspension is not technically kind of their status right now, they are non-roster or whatever it is on leave from their teams. And Gary Bettman told us on Friday he would be surprised if any of these players play while these proceedings are going on. And given how we don't know how long this is going to take, it is really hard to see, at least in the foreseeable future, any of these guys in the NHL. Now, if they get cleared of charges, there's a down the line where things have to be considered or asked and all of those things. But Carter Hart, certainly you could envision a few years from now playing in the KHL, as we've seen a lot of ex-NHL players do. But it's at this point, it doesn't look like there's a clear path for any of these guys back.
I still have lots of questions, and I understand that there was a bunch of things that they couldn't answer because, it's under the auspices of the courts. But is this going to be 5 separate trials, or is it all going to be one, and then essentially the charges for each individual will be determined separately?
It sounds like closer to the latter, but I want to see how this kind of plays out. The first court appearance yesterday was by lawyers representing all 5 of the players. It was a video Zoom court hearing. So all of them took part in the same hearing with the same judge, with the same prosecutors, to where this is one case, one investigation being brought against 5 individuals. And then there are counts against each of the players, 1 each against Alex Foreman, Dylan Dubé, Cal Foote, and Carter Hart, and 2 charges against Michael McLeod, 1 for his own actions as authorities in London said, and 1 for being party to the offense. So in theory, then there may be a slight difference on how you guys in Canada deal with this in the US. It would be a trial that determines guilty or not guilty on each particular count. So 1 each for 4 of the players and 2 for Michael McLeod.
We know the NHL's been doing an investigation into this. We know Hockey Canada has done one that apparently was ready to go at the beginning of the season and has been under appeal. What becomes of those investigations? Do they become public, and if so, when?
We're going to find out. And Gary Bettman and Bill Daly and the NHL have pledged to release these findings. And when asked about this on Friday, kind of walked it back a bunch, that they may not be legally allowed to release the findings of this investigation pending what the results are of this litigation in London, Ontario, of kind of what happens out of this. Is there any kind of agreement? What is redacted? What is allowed to be in kind of the public sphere? So I think the NHL and Hockey Canada, by extension's hands are tied a little bit here. I think the NHL wanted very much to release the findings and kind of show what the independent investigator found. But because this is a judicial process now, they can't do anything at this point until there's a resolution of the trial. And even after that, they may be limited in what they're actually allowed to release. Stephen
Whyno with us with the AP here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hey, shout out to Big Guy tuning in from France. I'm looking forward to watch the game at 1 a.m. local time. Hey, get a nap in, Big Guy, and enjoy the game this evening. Whyno, it is Super Bowl week. I've got to quickly ask you, I know you do quite a bit on the Commanders beat. Fill us in on the choice of Dan Quinn as the head coach. Is this was this a silver medal, if you will, that they didn't get their guy? And what's the significance of Cliff Kingsbury coming in as the OC?
It might be a bronze medal, really. And obviously the Commanders were very interested in Ben Johnson, very interested in Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens. But this is not like they settled on Dan Quinn as much as they realize, I think, that this is a long-term process, that they want to set up someone with good habits, someone who's a leader, someone who has experience. And Dan Quinn's not old for the earth at 53, but older than those candidates, certainly, but also has been an NFL head coach before, something that a lot of the other candidates involved had not done. Raheem Morris, I think if they had known Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald were going to either stay or take other jobs, I think that the Commanders were very serious about Raheem Morris before the Atlanta Falcons hired him as well. But Dan Quinn is a guy who is very well respected around the NFL. And if you're saying this might be a 3 to 5 year sort of plan going forward, he is the guy who's now kind of in charge of doing just the coaching job. Let Adam Peters, who came over from San Francisco, kind of pick the roster and go from there. And you added Cliff Kingsbury, and all of a sudden all the Caleb Williams speculation starts. Washington sitting there with the second pick in the draft. But Drake May at North Carolina also ran the same offense Cliff Kingsbury ran at Texas Tech, at USC, and with the Arizona Cardinals. So I think the Commanders certainly signaled that they're going to try to find their quarterback of the long-term future here and let Cliff Kingsbury evaluate kind of who that person's going to be and work with that person.
Would they have to trade up to number 1 to get Williams? And what do you think the chances of that happening is?
It is, everything's on the table at this point. And I don't know what the inner workings of what the Chicago Bears front office is thinking of kind of where they want to go, whether it's Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, kind of the other options at the top of the draft. Russell Wilson might be available in free agency. Kirk Cousins is available in free agency. There's a lot of kind of quarterback carousel that could be happening this offseason. But you'd have to think if you're the Commanders, you can't expect Caleb Williams to be there with the second pick in the draft. And if that's going to be your guy, it might cost you a future first-round pick even to move up one spot to go get him.
Hey, before we go, who's getting your nickel on Sunday in Vegas?
I'm going with your Kansas City Chiefs, my friend. I just being I covered the AFC title game in Baltimore. I got to be around Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and kind of see what the playoff magic was in those guys coming into Baltimore, beating the Ravens, who had been superior to everybody else in the league during the second half of the regular season. I just think there's something about this Chiefs team that they're going to get it done back to back.
Well, I know. Great catching up, man. Always love talking to you on the program. Thanks for doing this, and enjoy the pucks this week, and of course the big game on Sunday.
You too, Hustler. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Give him a follow on Twitter at @swino. And when you're there, check out the book. We know we love those e-bug stories. He's got it up, pinned at the top. It's Odd Man In. Hockey's Emergency Goalies and the Wildest One-Day Job in Sports. You can pick that up at Amazon or wherever you get it. All right, we're going to head to Pittsburgh, get the latest on the Jets with our pal Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Of course, the big news today right off the top of the show was Brady Oliveira re-signing here in Winnipeg with the Blue Bombers, and the subsequent domino of A.J. Ouellette reportedly agreeing to terms with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Of course, all of our Bomber reports are brought to you by the proud sponsor of the home of the Bombers, Princess Auto. Can't wait to get to Princess Auto Stadium this summer. Get back in the stands to see the Bombers try and win their 5th straight Western Championship. Of course, Princess Auto, proudly Winnipeg founded, headquartered in Winnipeg, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Wallace & Wallace are Winnipeg's fencing and overhead doors specialist, serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. Of course, if you need the security and protection of a new fence, Wallace is always the #1 place to call. But they're also the go-to people for overhead garage doors. And while it's not particularly cold outside right now, winter is the time that puts by far the most stress on your garage door. The right time to prevent downtime this winter is now. Give Wallace & Wallace a call to book your inspection and maintenance service. Call today for residential and commercial overhead door sales and service. There's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. And hey, big shout out to the gang down at F Apparel. I'm heading out to a wedding next week. Of course, my pal and the gang and the wedding party, of course, went down to F Apparel to get their suits for the big day. If you need to up your menswear game heading into the spring, it's F Apparel, folks. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in town. And if you are involved in a wedding or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a 15% discount when the wedding party gets their suits at F Apparel. They're all downtown at 190 Smith Street, but you might want to check them out online and make an appointment to go in for a fitting at F, that's EPHapparel.com. All right, let's bring in Mike McIntyre to the program to get ready to resume the season for the Winnipeg Jets. Mike, how's Pittsburgh treating you?
Cannot complain, Huss. Always liked Pittsburgh. It actually reminds me a lot of Winnipeg. Blue collar, working class, lots of had a lovely walk post morning skate, kind of through downtown. Lots of great old buildings, lots of character, and should be a good hockey game tonight. Looking forward to finally being an NHL game. It seems like forever since we had one. I know it's only been 10 days, but it has been a while.
Long enough. Hey, just before we talk about the pucks, did you have a Primanti Brothers sandwich?
I have not. I have not had one yet, but that is certainly. I did hit my. There's a taco place here in Pittsburgh that is easily one of my favorite lunch places to go. So I actually went there yesterday, had the tacos, had to battle a lot of, it was very busy because Madonna was in town yesterday, Huss, the Material Girl. And there was like everybody and their dog dressed up for the Madonna concert last night. By the way, she didn't even take the stage till like almost 11 p.m. apparently.
Diva move.
Yeah, imagine those poor arena workers who had to scramble through the night to get to PPG Paints Arena ready for a hockey game and ready for the morning skate. In fact, it was like after 10 last night, and apparently she still hadn't taken the stage. I was starting to wonder if she might still be belting out, like a virgin while players were skating around her this morning, that they might have to have the two events intersect given how late she went. But apparently that's kind of par for the course. She's known for her very late starts.
Well, hopefully the Jets will be ready to start on time
Very
tonight.
good.
Nice little segue in there. And
Yes.
I know you were talking about Madonna references in your copy. Don't even think about making a Like a Virgin reference to Sean Monahan's first game as a Winnipeg Jet tonight, Mike. But Monahan wasn't out there this morning, and I think that probably raised a few eyebrows before you got into Talk to Bones.
Sure did. And, the explanation for it was kind of strange. And maybe this is just a case of Sean Monahan, he's still getting to know all his teammates, because to hear Rick Bowness explain it, he told the entire team they're welcome to take the morning skate off. Every single player showed up for morning skate except the new guy. It almost feels like they pranked him or something. Because, I'm sure, like, in hindsight, had he known that everybody was going to come except him, he probably thought there were going to be other guys take the option as well. And he was probably kind of sitting at the hotel going, where'd everybody go? Where are all my teammates? So, a couple things. I guess that certainly speaks to the Jets being eager to get back at it. The fact that they apparently all had the option. In fact, Rick Bowness flat out said, and I'm not just paraphrasing, he actually said, I don't care if they have a morning skate for the rest of the year. He's putting a priority on rest. Now that tune may change if the Jets if their play starts to slip, but I think the coach is giving his team, some considerable rope here. But it certainly speaks to maybe where this team's focus is at, that even with that option, everybody came to morning skate, save for Sean Monahan, who it almost feels like he didn't get the memo. I have a strange feeling, Huss, that we'll see him Thursday at the morning skate in Philadelphia. In fact, I'd be willing to put money on it.
Maybe he's just not a morning guy. Maybe he said, "Oh, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. No morning skates. I'll see you guys at the game tonight."
Yeah, and hey, I'm not much of a morning person either. I suspect you're probably not. You're a late night guy, Huss.
I am not. Like I'm fully here for taking the morning skate off.
For sure. Like, hey, if Sean Monahan does his best work, after dark, that'll suit the Jets just fine. They only have a couple afternoon games, and even afternoon isn't morning, right? So, yeah, I mean, it definitely did, especially when you had the aura of who are the Jets going to move off the roster to make room for Mark Scheifele. All of a sudden, Sean Monahan's not out there, and you're like, oh, did he get sick? Did he tweak something? But Rick Bowness quickly said, oh, no, he's fine. He's playing. And, of course, as we then found out, it was Axel Janssen-Fjällby who basically drew the short straw. Not a huge surprise, Huss, at least to me. I don't know about you. I think we probably all anticipated it was going to be either him or Dominic Toninato. I think if for Dominic Toninato, he can play center, and we know the Jets have had some issues with depth at center. If they hope those issues have now been addressed with Scheifele healthy and Monahan, but I think keeping the centerman around is not a huge surprise. And it may all be moot anyways, because at some point, they're going to have to do something with David Gustafsson here. Like, I don't know how long they can keep him on injured reserve. Can they keep him there all the way to the trade deadline when rosters expand? Like, I'm no doctor, but he sure looks healthy to me. And you know, he's been out of a regular.
Like, how much oversight is there? Like, I mean, I remember what Ryan Reeves said, sort of pushing the envelope with the Leafs and almost forcing him to activate him. David Gustafsson, I don't think, is going to do anything of the sort. But at what point does the league say, we know this guy's healthy, why is he not activated? And I think we all know the answer.
Yeah, put it this way. I think there's more oversight in your typical workplace where you'd probably have to provide a doctor's note. You know, if someone keeps calling in sick, right? Eventually the boss is going to say, yeah, can we get that in writing? I don't believe, you know, I don't think the NHL is checking medical reports or getting on the phone. You know, what I would think might happen, though, in some cases, Huss, is if, let's say, a player's being hidden on injured reserve, you know, at some point the player might start to make some noise, or his agent, you know, who says, hey, and I guess the agent could cause some issues, including with the NHL. If the agent were to start saying, my client's healthy and this team is just hiding him because they don't want to make a roster move. You know, I think you're right about Gustafsson. Like, for one thing, when you're on the NHL roster, even though you're on injured reserve, you're still collecting an NHL paycheck. And so, you know, it's not an ideal situation. He just keeps practicing and practicing and practicing, kind of no end in sight. We'll see how it plays out. You know, I laugh. I know you're in a lot of fantasy pools, Huss. I laugh. Like, I think about my fantasy leagues, and if a player in our league, if he keeps an injured, you know, a no longer injured guy on his IR because he doesn't want to have to drop someone, like the other owners in the league, they go nuts, right? They start sending nasty messages around. So, you know, there's probably more oversight even in a fantasy hockey league than maybe in the National Hockey League.
Mike, back to tonight's game and the debut of Monahan. I mean, we haven't spoke on the show since the trade happened. First off, your thoughts on the acquisition of Monahan, the price the Jets paid, and what he brings to the team beginning tonight in Pittsburgh.
Well, look, I think it became, you know, glaringly apparent that this team needed an upgrade at the 2C position. No offense to Vlad Nemestikov, but Vlad Nemestikov, I mean, he was forced to be like the 1C with Mark Scheifele being hurt, and Adam Lowry was playing out of position, you know, not out of position, he was still center, but he's taken away from his shutdown role. And, you know, you look at what the Jets rolled out before the break, I don't think a four centerman rotation of Nemestikov, Lowry, Papari, and Toninato, that does not scream Stanley Cup contender to me. And so I think, you know, and I asked Kevin Cheveldayoff this last week after the trade, and certainly indicated that seeing life without Mark Scheifele probably, you know, made it clear where this team could use an improvement. So I think, you know, getting a center was key. And we know what the market was, right? There's not a whole lot out there. Elias Lindholm certainly was out there. The Jets were absolutely in on Elias Lindholm. And obviously whatever they were offering, and we don't know what they're comparable to what the Canucks ultimately paid was. I do know this, Huss, the Jets paid less, probably a lot less, for Sean Monahan than they would have paid for Elias Lindholm. And I'm particularly talking about not losing anything out of the organization that's already here. Yes, they lost their first round draft pick. That for sure would have been going to Calgary for Lindholm. But as we saw with what the Canucks did, they also had to add a roster player in Kuzmenko. And yes, there's a bit of a salary dump there. But they also then sent a very good young prospect, a guy that's tearing up junior right now. And so you look at, you know, what might the Jets have had to give up? You know, they didn't have to pay that price because obviously Vancouver beat it. But then I think the Jets wisely pivoted and quick. And, if the Jets had just added Sean Monahan at the deadline, I don't think I would have been as receptive to it as the fact that they've done it now. Because to me, first of all, it makes the price you paid, a first-round pick, the fact they're going to get him for 15 more games than they would have had they waited till the deadline, I think that makes that a little easier to swallow. Secondly, I think the chemistry and on all the things you now hope to build, there's a lot more runway that the Jets have. And so I like the move for a few reasons, because it addresses a position of need that they did it as early as they did. And I also like what it means, potentially for the power play, for their struggle in the faceoff circle, and maybe most importantly, Huss, and we'll see starting tonight, what it might mean for Cole Perfetti and Nikolai Ehlers, a couple of very good wingers that have kind of got lost in the shuffle here a bit. And I think the fact that they're now going to be with Sean Monahan, to me, that likely means they see the ice a little more. And I think that's probably a good thing for the Jets overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, is that having Vlad on the fourth line.
Well, the fourth line is,
I think, takes that even more so. Like,
yes.
There's a certain number of minutes. I mean, in a game, you take out special teams, the first line is going to be getting theirs. That Adam Lowry's line is going to be playing in those, in those big high leverage situations against top players on the other teams, and finding those matchups and finding those opportunities to get both of those lines out. It'll be interesting to follow that overall. Mike, the other thing that I really do like about the Monahan acquisition is in relation to the salary cap and the fact that he only makes $1.9 million. And it does give Kevin Cheveldayoff, some more room to maneuver when potentially adding another player. We've talked a lot about Chris Tanev and how he would look on that Jet blue line. What do you make of the Jets' interest or perceived interest in a player like Tanev, and the Jets' willingness to pay the cost for Calgary, which we've heard is rumored to be a second rounder and a prospect? Wow. The big key is, what prospect, I guess. But how serious do you think the Winnipeg Jets will be at trying to look at Tanev or potentially somebody else to come in and add another solid, reliable NHLer to potentially play in the top four, but certainly to fortify the blue line?
Yeah, I think a defenseman for sure is on the shopping list. And, I think the importance of that probably picked up once they lost Declan Chisholm on waivers, because there's one less defenseman now in the pipeline. Everybody, not on the roster, everybody moved up a spot. Now that, if you're Ville Heinola, that's probably a good thing. And Kevin Cheveldayoff's comments last week, Huss, I thought were really interesting about Ville Heinola. I don't know about you, but my takeaway from hearing the GM speak, it sure sounded like they think Ville's going to be here sooner than later. And I don't know where he potentially fits with what they have now on the roster, assuming everyone stays healthy. And especially if they were to go out and add a defenseman, and not just a 7 or 8 guy, but if they take a big swing like a Tanev, what does that do for the roster? Did they potentially move? Can they move a Nate Schmidt? Is there any way to potentially move that deal? I think that's something they've certainly looked at in the past, and clearly they have not been able to.
What complicates that is the fact that Schmidt's been pretty damn solid this year playing with Dylan Sandberg. Like, we would not be having this conversation if Nate Schmidt didn't have the price tag that he has on the salary cap.
No, you're right. If he was a $2 million player, we'd probably be saying that they're getting great value out of that third pair and for what they're paying for it. I do think, Huss, we got 4 weeks from Friday till the trade deadline. I think how these next few weeks play out will ultimately tell the tale. I think we may start to see a bit of an arms race. We're probably seeing it already in the West, right? With the Lindholm ad, Corey Perry, is added by Vegas.
Edmonton.
or Edmonton, sorry, Zach Parise was added by Colorado. And I suspect we're going to see some more moves here among other Western teams. And, I think there's going to be an element of trying to keep up. And I think there's also a feeling that the West is winnable. And that should be the feeling if you're the Winnipeg Jets, that you have every bit of chance. That being said, you'll always look to make some adds to your roster. And you're right, with the Monahan deal, if the Jets had acquired Lindholm, they're probably done because of what that, unless they could have somehow got rid of salary. Like, that was probably it. The fact that they got Monahan, as you point out, certainly leaves the door open for something else to happen. And I wouldn't be surprised. And I think, I wouldn't even rule out that getting another winger in here, and there's certainly room to do that if they wanted to.
Who I think that winger might be is Rucker McGroarty once the Michigan Wolverines have finished their season. I mean, to be honest, you mentioned Villy. Like, I think Villy gets a call up and is with the team. I'm not sure whether he plays unless somebody gets hurt. I think Rucker McGroarty signs here at the end of that season. I think they probably get him into a couple games depending on how things look down the stretch. And I would not at all rule out Rucker McGroarty actually being a player in the playoffs this season.
Well, we know he's going to come in, assuming he comes in, like he'll probably come in on a real high, right? And we know this is an extremely positive individual. He's having a magical season. There's Hobie Baker talk. He's the leading point producer per game in all of college hockey. This is a guy who, given what he went through earlier in the year with his injury and then to come back and captain the U.S. team to a gold medal at the World Juniors, I agree, Huss. Like, that could be an addition, and maybe that's with what the Jets have. And again, we know they have some forward depth already here, and we haven't even touched on guys like Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov, who are having terrific seasons as rookies with the Manitoba Moose. That, let's say the Jets get on a playoff run, those guys are going to be black aces at least, depending on obviously what the Moose are doing and if they're in the playoffs or not. But, there is some forward depth, maybe I think a lot more than there is on the blue line. And so, I think we could probably see a defenseman be a priority here. Tanev, I know there's talk about a second rounder. I just wonder if there's a lot of suitors for him. Probably the closer we get to the deadline, maybe the bidding war, if you will, erupts, and that drives the price up. And if you're the Flames, if you're the Flames, I mean, you should be trying to maximize. If he's a guy that a bunch of teams are in on, play them off each other, right? And that's to me, when people talk about why don't more teams do what the Jets and the Canucks just did, which is add players well in advance of the deadline, I think that's because usually that only benefits the buyer, not the seller. I guess in the case of Montreal and Calgary, they got offers for Lindholm and Monahan that their GMs must have felt he can't do any better than this. And I go back again, Haas, you and I think have talked about this. Like, I go back to Nino Niederreiter being traded by Nashville last year, like a week before the deadline to the Jets. And the rather paltry price the Jets paid, it was a second rounder, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. And nobody even knew Niederreiter. Like, it was like a huge shock. Like, other teams were like, we didn't even know that guy was going to be moved. And it made me think, like, hey, if I'm the Predators, why wouldn't I have waited? And maybe teams that lost out on a guy that they really wanted, like, maybe they could have driven it up to a first rounder or a first rounder and a prospect. So I think, we're probably not going to see anything here until, from the Jets' perspective, until at or on the deadline or near the deadline. But a defenseman, I think, is certainly still something they will be looking at.
Mike, listen, obviously we're focused on this game tonight and Monahan's debut. But yesterday in London, We learned some details from the London police on the 5 players from the 2018 team that have been charged with sexual assault. I want to lean on your background as the guy on the crime beat. How do you see this going? We talked with Whyno earlier. Like, I have a hard time imagining that these guys have any NHL future, potentially ever, but especially until this is done. But I mean, I'm sure you paid attention a little bit yesterday. I mean, just what were your observations about where things are at, what we heard from the police yesterday, and where this thing goes forward?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I want to say my thoughts, as always in cases like this, is with the victim and what she has endured, and given what we learned a bit more about yesterday, a lot of what she endured, I think, has got to be looked in further in terms of why this has taken as long as it had. And unfortunately, the police yesterday weren't willing, I suppose some could say they weren't able, to answer certain questions, some very valid questions that were put to them about the whole process here. And, they spoke of new evidence being uncovered and a case that had been closed being reopened, made it clear that new evidence had nothing to do with the victim. Like, this isn't a situation where a story changed. At least we don't think that's the case. There's no indication. So is this that there wasn't the proper procedure followed? We don't know. And the police aren't saying. I certainly have a lot of questions. I did cover hundreds of sexual assault cases over my 21 years on the crime and justice beat. And I know that these cases are very complex at times. And it can be difficult, number one, just to get them into a courtroom. And it can also be very difficult to get convictions, especially in cases where it often boils down to one person's word against another. That being said, I'm very interested to see how this plays out, Huss. Like, there was talk of up to 8 people, I think, in that room at one point. We know that only 5 have been charged. From what we heard yesterday, doesn't sound like any other charges are coming. But we also heard of publication bans on a couple of witnesses. And I mean, one of my thoughts is, have they flipped other members of this team, like our potential witnesses, other players? And I don't know the answer to that again. And we probably won't know the answer to that for a couple of years, because that's the other thing you quickly learn about the justice system is nothing is very quick. And when you have multiple accused, as we do here, I think that makes this process even more complicated than if it was just a singular accused, because the interests, if you will, of the 5, they aren't necessarily all going to be aligned with each other. Like,
well, let me ask you this. I mean, I kind of put this to Whyno, but you'd be a better person to ask this. Like, when this goes forward, is it one trial where all of them are there with their lawyers, and at the end, you'll have verdicts for all of them, or are they almost tried separately?
Well, prosecution typically in these cases wants to try them together, especially us, when the allegation is that they worked in concert with each other, that this was a gang sexual assault. And, just not unlike a prosecution involving, and covered many of these, like a gang, a biker gang or a street gang that was accused of committing an infraction or multiple infractions. So the prosecution often wants to try them together. However, defense lawyers, they sometimes move for the opposite, and that's to separate their client from the rest of the pack. And there may be reasons for that in terms of, again, what the level of alleged involvement is, what type of defense they wish to put forward. And so one thing we may see here, and this is another reason why these things can drag out, you could see motions for severance, which is what they're called in the legal system, where lawyers for one or more look to sever their client from the rest of the pack. And then depending on how that goes, and I've seen many cases where there was severance granted, now you have multiple trials. And, again, though, if you're the prosecution, you don't want that. The biggest reason you don't want that, Huss, you're trying to protect the interests of your victim here. And multiple cases, if there was severance, I mean, now you're talking about potentially having to force the victim to testify multiple times. And I think that the preference would be to have it all in one. And I'll be really curious to see, first of all, if there's severance motions made. Secondly, do all 5 of these accused get to trial? I mean, a huge part of the legal system, we know there's negotiation that goes on behind the scenes. Usually that comes after discovery. And I know the prosecution yesterday said that they would be sending over, a large bundle of evidence now that the charges have formally been laid. So I expect now in these coming weeks, all of the accused, they're now going to, we can't talk about it publicly. There's publication bans on certain evidence. That doesn't mean the accused don't know what all that evidence is. It's not kept a mystery from them. They will be well aware of what the prosecution has, who they plan to call as witnesses, what those witnesses potentially might say. And, that's why the coming months will be very interesting to see, what potentially happens here. As for the hockey part, I know Gary Bettman, seemed to indicate at the All-Star game over the weekend that the NHL would just kind of step back and let the legal process play out before they make any decision. I mean, that alone probably means the NHL has kicked any decision on these players, a year, maybe longer down the road. I'm with you though, Huss. I mean, regardless of how this plays out in a court of law, I think the standard that the NHL would be able to use, they don't have to rely on the legal standard of, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and all that, to prove a criminal charge. They could make their own decision as a private entity. I would not expect to see any of these players back anytime soon, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll be KHL time for anyone that's able to continue playing, and they've all got expiring contracts at the end of this season. So, I don't think. I mean, the backlash. I mean, these guys are so radioactive, and I'm sure will continue to be. I can't see a team deciding that it's in their best interest to sign one of these players moving forward. Mike, great stuff as always. We will look forward to your reporting from Pittsburgh in the Freep tomorrow, and then. Of course, follow you as you head to Philly before the team gets back for that big one, a rematch of tonight's game on Saturday. Thanks so much for doing this.
I'm going to recreate the scene from Rocky and run up the steps there, Huss.
Hey, that's what the gram is for. That's what Twitter's for.
Look for that,
I would look forward to seeing you doing that. And yes, if you do go to Primanti Brothers, they literally put fries on everything, on the sandwiches. I think they actually put fries on a salad there too. So that is just a Pittsburgh thing. But I thought there might be fries on your taco that you had, considering our time in Pittsburgh before. Anyways, looking forward to seeing Monahan's debut tonight. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks. Have a great week.
All right, great Jets chat and more with Mike McIntyre there on Winnipeg Sports Talk. By the way, we sort of led off. We've got some more CFL free agency news, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do want to fire up the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray, and your reaction to the Bombers re-signing Brady Oliveira. How do you feel, Bomber fans, about the fact that Brady is back, but the fact that it's going to cost the Bombers $230 this year and $240 next year? Leave a note in the comments if you're watching afterwards, or just let us know in the chat right now. Just before we bring in Remis and get some of the latest from around CFL free agency, just got a text from the fellas over at Royal Sports, and they are ready to go for the Super Bowl. Lots of last-minute NFL gear is arriving daily for the Super Bowl, especially Chiefs stuff. So, Swifties, Kingdom, get on down to Royal Sports. Chiefs hoodies, long sleeve and short sleeve t-shirts in both men's and women's, and actually some really cool women's stuff as well. So, if you're looking to throw the red of the Chiefs on for the Super Bowl, get down there. I know there's some Niners stuff coming in as well. I believe they're still waiting on those player T-shirts that are coming up, but it should all be there. Again, when you're thinking about anything from your favorite team, whether it be the Bombers or the Winnipeg Jets or around the sporting world, Royal Sports has it. And as I said, Super Bowl merch coming in by the day. So get ready for the big game with a trip down to Royal Sports. While you're at it, check out their incredible hockey section. All the skates that are available if you want to be hitting the river, presuming that we're able to, and all the ODRs. And thinking of spring break, snowboards, boots, bindings, and tons of cool stuff on the King's Skate, Snow, and Surf side as well. I'm actually going to go and get a Yeti mug, I think, for my Mexico trip coming up. I've been told that that's a very key addition, and they've got a great Yeti section over at Royal Sports as well. Hey, listen, we're back at it tonight with the Jets, and no better place to watch the Jets on the big screen with big sound than your local Boston Pizza. Head on down there. You might be able to catch the end of happy hour between 3 and 6 before puck drop, and then enjoy ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more, all while watching the game, including fun pick-a-player contests at your local BP. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can always get it hot and fresh to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And a big shout-out to our friends at Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge. Of course, summer does seem far away, but the booking is hot and heavy for Aitken's and spots at Aitken's Lake Lodge this summer. If you're looking for a great fly-in fishing experience, either for a personal or a business trip, Aitken's is the spot. You can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. And of course, as great as the fishing is, the hospitality of the Aitken's team and the Turan family is even better. Aitken'sLake.com for more information, and check them out on socials at Aitken's Lake on X and Instagram. All right, Remo, we're going to bring in Geoff Fienberg, but things are coming in hot and heavy from the CFL world. Brady's back with the Bombers at a big number. AJ Ouellette is going to the Riders. And as we were talking with Mike, some more information leaking out on Bombers going elsewhere.
Yeah, here it is. Oh, wait. Hold on. I had this sound effect already.
Breaking. We've got breaking news.
Great sounder. Execution, 5 out of 10. Sounder, 10 out of 10.
Could have been better. Could have been better. Okay, we have two big signings. We've talked about the running back market. First domino to fall today, Brady Oliveira, then AJ Ouellette. Well, the BC Lions have signed American running back William Stanback to a one-year contract per sources, and John Hodge is reporting that on 3 Down Nation. He was released by Montreal last week, so he could get to free agency. And what did he make? He was the highest paid running back last year, making $160,000. So I'm curious what he got this year with Brady. You know, we're kind of waiting to see what AJ Ouellette got, and we did see Brady getting $235K average over the 2 years. But in terms of Bombers going elsewhere, Hassan, we had talked about this yesterday or previously that it was likely Demario Houston was going to end up somewhere else. And Dan Ralph of the Canadian Press reporting, now hearing Demario Houston has agreed in principle to a 2-year deal with Calgary that has a total guaranteed figure exceeding $275,000, making him one of the league's highest defensive backs. That is
$275 a year guaranteed?
Okay, it says 2-year deal, total guaranteed. So I think that's the total. That might be the total amount.
Or maybe that's just what is actually guaranteed. I would imagine, if he's going to be one of the top paid players at DB. Well, John Hodge is going to come on tomorrow. But the bottom line is he's getting a fat check to move out to Calgary and try and fortify that secondary.
Yeah, John Hodge reporting on 3 Down Nation as well. It's funny. I texted John today. I'm like, John, can you come on with us? He's like, I'm about to break a couple things. I don't think I can do it. And here he is with the Stanback news and Demario Houston. So he says the deal includes $275,000 in hard money. Assuming that means guaranteed over the 2 years.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, if they were going to cut him loose, that's what they would pay. Yeah. But I'm sure it'll be more than that. But that's a very, very nice amount of guaranteed money. Big guy's asking if Jeff Coates still a free agent. Yeah, no word on Jackson Jeffcoat right now. And listen, I love Jeffcoat. I hope that he's back with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Mm-hmm. but I'm not sure that he is in a great position free agency-wise, just because an element to buyer beware with the injuries that he had, especially last year.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, health has certainly been a concern, but when he's on the field, he's among the best in the league. And, they had experience playing without him for a while, but we talked about what an impact it was with him and Jefferson. So I'm curious what direction they go. And there's been some moves on special teams. Edmonton Elks signing kicker Boris Beatty from the Argos. And they also signed returner Javon Leake from the Argos. The Argos, they've lost a couple players here. And as far as kickers, I believe Sergio Castillo doesn't have a contract. And I'm curious what this means for the kicking market. And we know how important kicking is in any kind of football. So that's a good one for Edmonton.
Yeah, I really hope that we'll get the luchador back here. Sergio has been, moving on from Medlock, to the Legio era. Sergio Castillo really, really solidified that position. And, you wonder what it's going to cost, but it is a priority, and it has and it should be, especially in 3-down football. We're hoping to have John Hodge on with us tomorrow, so we'll have more on the latest on everything going on around the Canadian Football League then.
Yeah, just more on the kid. Yeah, Mark Legio, he re-signed yesterday with Hamilton, but I saw Lira Mahiralahu is back in the CFL as well. It's hard to keep track of all this. I forget where he signed, but I saw his name. He had bounced around in the NFL, kicking and practice rosters for a while. So he's back. I'm trying to remember where. Sorry.
Well, as they say, full rundown tomorrow on the latest on the tampering week and all these deals being agreed to throughout the league. Of course, it's tampering week.
He's in Toronto. Sorry, so he went to Toronto, and Boris Beatty went to Edmonton. Okay,
went to Edmonton. Well, as they say, hopefully the chairs will settle and Sergio will be back with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Of course, hockey's back. We just talked about a big week in the Canadian Football League offseason. The season isn't done yet, though, in the National Football League. Super Bowl week is here. Media night was night last night. And we couldn't have Super Bowl week without a visit from one of the WST favorites, Geoff Fienberg, to talk about the big game and Liv being in Vegas this weekend. Now, let's welcome Geoff into the program. Fienberg, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well, Huss. I feel like maybe it's an early congratulations or a late apology. Not so much an apology, but I know when the Chiefs won the first one, I was like, you guys are acting like you just won triplets or something. Like, can you please just settle down a little? Well, here we are. It hasn't been that many years, and it seems like the doctor did look to mom and dad and say it's triplets. Whether it happens Sunday or a future February Sunday, sort of feels inevitable at this point. So congratulations just for being there again, buddy.
Hey, listen, it's you can never take it for granted. But I will say this, as someone that, is a hardcore fan of a team in the AFC West, I think, pay attention to the minutia of the teams in the division more on a week-by-week basis. I know there was so much made of the offensive struggles of the Chiefs this year, but were people not completely overlooking the fact that this was by far the best defense in the Mahomes era for Kansas City?
The reason I think I'm able to skate by not getting harassed by Chiefs Kingdom is because they love me. Whether I say it on the show or I'll whisper a sweet nothing into your ear, another friend of mine, or my cousin who loves the Chiefs, like, it was going to be fine. No one in the division had a pulse this year to sort of even make the Chiefs worry while they were having their concerns. And yes, the defense stepped up, and Spagnuolo is incredible, not just only in scheme, but how he's developed so many of those great players. And it's all full autonomy for him on that side of the ball. Feels like the old Patriots, where next year it's like, let me play the Chiefs in September, because they know they'll get their motor running. They'll figure it out. They're too good. Between coach, quarterback, and obviously Kelsey to an extent, they're just so reliable. Even when you traded Tyreek Hill, who's the guy being like, Now, maybe did I underestimate what Tyreek Hill could do for Miami? Yeah, I did. But was I bang on what that trade was about to do for you? I told you I was going to start the second phase of what was about to happen. And this is, I guess, part of it, winning different ways with a guy like Brett Veach making those picks and Spagnuolo's ability to develop those players and Old Yeller at coach and the greatest quarterback ever. I don't know. Jimmy Harbaugh's in town, Huss. We got work to do.
Well,
Knock you off your pedestal, pal.
We'll get back to the game in 1 sec and the matchup on Sunday, but you got to be fired up about Harbaugh. I mean, this is a guy that will bring an absolute, excuse the pun, bolt of energy to a team that I think really, really needed it. And you are going from a guy that proved himself to be pretty much incompetent to a guy that has won at every level in every place that he's been at.
You followed the league a long time. You are used to the Chargers just not doing things right. You know, having a level of talent. But even when you would bet them, Huss, I'm sure you and Dusty would be like, betting the Chargers, but I know full well, like, it's there because they don't win. They don't do anything right on the margins. Now, when you want to bet the Chargers, you might be like, coach, quarterback, I don't feel so bad about this. But yeah, I mean, as much as you say the things they needed, there's a level of credibility that the Chargers desperately needed, not only as a franchise in the big picture of the league on a national level, but still, like, really having done nothing in the Los Angeles market. Jim Harbaugh brings a lot of cachet when he speaks. Sort of people like to pick up on the sound bites, and hopefully he can deliver. I'll say this, I'm almost worried because it's been too positive. There's not been a single person, that's been like, I don't think this is going to work. Now, people can debate the timeline for which it can work, but I haven't seen anybody. So I'm a little nervous about that. As a Charger fan, you're always worried there's going to be a slipper on the other foot. They do have cap troubles, but look, the Steelers made the playoffs this year. Gardner Minshew was in a play-in game to make the playoffs. I fully expect with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh with that extra wild card spot, the Chargers are just going to battle for it. That would be my expectation for year one.
You mentioned the cap, though. This team could look quite significantly different, especially with some of the big stars, considering what these cap hits are due.
Yeah, Chargers got a big problem on the cap number. It surrounds 4 players: Bosa, Mack, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Unlike other teams you see around the league with cap problems, most of the capologist people acknowledge there's actually a really clean and simple fix here for the Chargers. They can really get out of it quickly, but it would probably mean getting rid of. The way Jim Harbaugh spoke, he mentioned Keenan Allen. He did not mention Joey Bosa. He did not mention the other guy. So I believe Keenan might get a lifer deal with the Chargers. But I would expect they'll move on from for sure Mike Williams and probably for sure one of those edge rushers, Huss. But they got the 5th pick. They'll have to draft smart. You hope for the way Pete Carroll just came in there and ran the draft for 2 straight years. That's what you can hope. When the Chargers draft a 4th-round center from the Big Ten and a 5th-round linebacker from the Big Ten, you can book those will be hosses, but that's for another day. Things are finally positive in Charger land.
Yeah, you got to find yourself a Creed Humphrey. Literally, though, you mentioned those 4th and 5th rounders. Quality scouting, quality general managing. You got to have your stars, but you do need to round it out, and that is really why the Chiefs are where they are right now. Let me ask you about the Niners. AFC guys, what is your take on the Niners, their season, and how they performed in the playoffs, but most importantly, where they're at as a team going into Sunday?
I'm a little nervous. I would be nervous if I was the 49ers. You'd see sort of the eye in the sky from the Lions game, and there seemed to have just been a lot of lack of effort, especially on run defense and especially when it comes to tackling. And you watch football all year, the Chiefs are going to run hard. They're going to run aggressive. Pacheco, it's like that Eddie George. He's going to run upright. He's going to hurt you. You have to want to tackle him, or else, because when guys do want to tackle him, Huss, you see him getting those extra 3 yards. You think that play's over, he's making it that much easier for everyone else. So that would be my big concern. I do have a 49ers future coming into this one. Nothing insane. I got them at 6-1, at 4-1, just when I sort of felt that they would probably be in this spot. And part of the fun, like as a guy who likes to bet, a bit of a degen at times, Huss, like just having a future in the game is a win itself. Like to not have to go out of pocket to bet the big game always feels nice. But yeah, I would be concerned, and I would be concerned about Brock Purdy. This, like, compared to Patrick Mahomes, like, what are we talking about in terms of a big game stage and a big game comfortability? If you were playing the Chiefs, I should think you should maybe flirt with Chiefs alt lines, because I think one interception could lead to 2 interceptions. Like I'm nervous. I'm nervous you're getting your triplets. I'm nervous I'm losing my future. I do hope Christian McCaffrey and those guys can go absolutely off. I think Debo is in a place to go off. He got hurt right at the beginning of the game with the bye, and things got away from them in the Lions playoff game as well. I think we could finally see like the full Debo like onslaught. So I got a couple props with the 49ers offenses, and I'm in on Debo at over 14.5 rushing yards. He got 3 carries in the Lions game. He's healthy, and now we got 2 weeks. He's going to make a couple plays. And I like George Kittle over 47.5 receiving yards. You're so locked down on the out. Spags will bring those blitzes. Kyle's got to find easy completions to Kittle, because they ignite everything there, I believe. So those would be my favorite 49er props.
You know, have you been surprised at where the line's at? Like,
yes.
It seems like a lot of Chiefs money has come in, and yet it's actually gone a little bit up with a better number for Kansas City right now, which does smell fishy.
And everyone you hear speak about the game, it's like, you know, it's listening to a bit of the early radio row action, Huss. It's like, oh, no one says they're betting the 49ers. I'm not even talking about people that want to buy into any tinfoil hat stuff. It's just, it's the Super Bowl. Like you understand, like people don't want to bet against the juju that is Patrick Mahomes, that is this fun, I don't want to call it a Disney-esque, but you know, the Swifty stuff about it. I'm not wearing no tinfoil hat. I'm not going that angle at all. I'm just saying, like, there's a feeling in the air of like a fairy dust, a magic dust that surrounds this version of this Chiefs team that a lot of people say they don't want to bet against, that say they aren't betting against, but yet, as you've noted, the line is where it is. To my understanding, early in last week, like some big syndicate plays have come in on San Francisco. And I guess it's people that the sports books respect, that enough casual, like, you know, the casual money isn't enough yet on the Chiefs to sort of offset the respected bet of whatever happened on San Francisco would be the only thing I can think of.
There'll be a ton of public money, people that maybe just bet one game a year coming in closer. I would assume that for all the reasons you just mentioned, people will blindly bet Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's Tuesday right now. The line's plus 112. How do you think that changes as we get closer to kickoff?
Yeah, I think in these made-for-TV sports books that we're very familiar with now, especially with this new ecosystem, I think we'll see like maybe straight-up pick'ems. I think they might have to offset some stuff. I would I would consider, if I like the Chiefs, also looking at those alt lines, or even like books that let you parlay stuff. Purdy 2 picks with the Chiefs money line, like something. I don't know. That's a big concern for me as someone who kind of wants to see San Francisco win the game. Is Brock Purdy like going to be ready for the moment? I think Brock Purdy's fine. I think he's great. I think he's a game manager that has shown an ability to make an elite plays. But this is like bigger than anything. So I'm nervous for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to Purdy over the last 2 months, starting with the nightmare game on Christmas night against the Ravens at home. And then really the start, most of the Green Bay game for that matter, and the start of the Detroit game. But credit to him for coming back, and that shows how good of a team the Niners are to stay in those games and actually win them. To me, I think, and you mentioned Steve Spagnuolo. Spags, that was a masterpiece against the Baltimore Ravens, and I think he does need another one of those to first and foremost minimize the damage the Niners do on the ground. They're the number 1 rushing offense, yards per carry. That has not traditionally, at least this season, been Kansas City's strength overall. I mean, if they can make Brock Purdy beat them and have them go at L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, that plays into the Chiefs' hands. But first and foremost, you got to force that to happen. And stopping McCaffrey and the rest of that running game is going to be a big challenge for Kansas City.
That is absolutely everything, Huss. Flat out, since they've made that trade, when he's in the lineup, I believe I saw they're 26-6. That's a plus 20 win. That's 20 to the win side when he is in that lineup. And if he can have like a Terrell Davis sort of day, he could have the Chiefs spinning. Because if the game is going that way that McCaffrey can eat, then obviously there's all those weapons and just little quick things at the line of scrimmage that Purdy can make the easy throws. But I totally agree. That's sort of where I lean. I think if the Chiefs win, I could see it being of a larger variety in this game because it does lend me to believe they will have shut down McCaffrey. The other thing, Huss, I haven't seen anyone, even the smart guys, the respected, the math nerds, no one's talking about this total. Because if you think the Chiefs win, it almost has to play to the under. 48 seems like a kind of a high number, but people also don't like to bet the under in a Super Bowl. But it's hard to correlate a Chiefs win to the over. Just the way, like, you play the whole Chiefs season in your head. Now, obviously, if the two Purdy picks I've sort of maybe manifested come to life, short fields, pick sixes, but we have not seen the chatter of the over. The line has almost stayed like still there.
It hasn't moved.
Yeah, it hasn't moved. The betting guys don't even like talking about it. I'm not really sure what that's about. And I'm not a total player. I really don't like playing totals. In a pick'em game, let me pick my side and try to like boost my ego by calling a pick'em Super Bowl. I enjoy that.
Geoff Fienberg with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Obviously, there's two teams playing on Sunday. There's 30 others getting ready for next year. How do you see things shaking down for the draft and with the Bears on the clock with the number one pick, knowing that Justin Fields is already on that team? They go to Caleb Williams and move Fields?
In the words of that classic Hockey Night in Canada intro, there's a buzz on the street. I don't know. There's a lot of rumor mongering here. And what aids the rumor mongering, Hustler, it would simply be rumor mongering we could put away and forget for at least 5 weeks. Why we cannot is because for the last year plus, anyone paying attention has been told that this Caleb Williams father is in charge. He's a wild card. People from the NFL that have interacted with him don't. It's not like we're happy to be here situation. It's been very
Androsian.
Yeah, it's been very bluster. Yeah, exactly. So that adds, right? That's the element that is very interesting. Now they bring in Kingsbury to Washington. They're close enough where maybe the Bears would pivot. Caleb could call his shot, be like, with the NIL, I'll go back to school. That's a dangerous move, though. Because if you're still going to be first overall, you're still going to go to a bad team. Like, let's say Carolina sucks again. It's not like, what are you going to do? Like, so if you want to roll it back, like if you want to threaten to roll it back, in the end, it's not like you're going to love the team that's going to pick you anyway. But then there's that Drake May camp that, people say is like a Josh Allen, Justin Herbert hybrid. So that's got to be exciting. And Jaden Daniels won a Heisman. So if the Bears truly do evaluate it and notice, like, Caleb Williams, for as amazing as he is, I'm not saying he can't, but he's never made it. Seems like there's no highlight of him from the pocket under structure. And maybe you could say Mahomes, we didn't have much under structure at the pro level, and look what happens. So you'd be scary to say that he can't do it, but yeah, there is a buzz on the street, and people who don't normally fish in the rumor mongering stuff like this have gotten involved. And sort of saying maybe stuff is here. And I'm not talking about Coward. He's quick to sort of play all over it. But yeah, as a draft hardo, I am fully enthralled in how this could play out.
Yeah, Fienberg, while I've got you here, we got to talk a little golf, and very interesting week for Liv in the PGA. But before that, how about our guy from the peg, Aaron Cockrell, in the season he's having. He had that incredible finish in Dubai, another strong week just this past week on the tour. He's going to be putting himself in a position to potentially earn that tour card now with the current setup.
Yes, an incredible Middle East start already. As you mentioned, finished 4th behind Rory, Højgaard, Cam Young. Qatari Masters this week, Huss. Still out, out in the Middle East. I'm going to sprinkle on some Cockrell 50-1, but it's lovely to see those sorts of results, especially in a tournament with that kind of star power.
Now, as far as live in the PGA Tour, they were at Pebble last week, the PGA Tour was, and they get the atmospheric river. They get 3 rounds in. Sunday is canceled. How was this a big win for Liv last week, and how big and how significant is it as they kind of get into another season with even more star power, in particular the addition of Rombo?
So I don't know how to quantify if it was a big win, in the sense that I'm still pretty sure CBS could throw up a replay of Pebble on Sunday from a past year. And most golf fans who aren't enthralled with betting or tracking or even caring are just happy to sit back and watch Pebble and watch great players hit golf shots from a tournament they don't even remember. I will say what came out of it for Liv is the very polarizing fact that they did play 54 holes. Wyndham Clark moved up to 6th in the world, while Joachim Neiman, also playing 54 holes, Hustler, went backwards in world rankings. So it's that sort of exact situation that I think is working out for Liv and how we're talking, than them being able to capitalize on some great TV audience. The trouble there, the problem it's almost going to be impossible for them to break through on TV is because 80% of the golf fans who aren't as aware as we are, they don't know what weeks you're playing. You can't play 11 tournaments a year and expect someone like my 80-year-old dad to know which week that is. So they just know, the people who are habitual watchers just know, I can put the TV on it on the weekend on Saturday and Sunday, CBS, NBC. It's like golf. It's like putting on the Weather Channel. Literally, it's just that we make fun of the PGA Tour playing every week, but the fact that they do, it's literally just, there's such a segment of sports fan or even casual niche golf fan who doesn't care about other sports that just knows it's on, if that makes any sense. And every Sunday, all but 2 weeks a year, they can turn it on at dinner time and watch a guy try to win a golf tournament. Liv, who knows when they're playing? I genuinely mean that. And I, as someone that is growing, Liv is growing on, I mean that. I will say Liv playing this week in Vegas, part of me thinks, are these people psychopaths? Now, you'd argue maybe they are, but the hubris it would take to play, how much oxygen is in the sports psyche, right? How much oxygen could be there? The Waste Management Phoenix Open, for all the luster the PGA Tour has lost, it's almost like a major in the fan psyche. Now, it doesn't do for the winner what a major does. It doesn't get you more endorsements or change your legacy. It's almost doesn't matter who wins. But from a public consciousness standpoint, it's literally maybe the biggest tournament the PGA has. It's embraced its pregame slot to the Super Bowl, and all that goes with it. For Liv to be going head-to-head with that and the Super Bowl takes quite a hubris, and I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Well, I thought, first of all, I didn't even know that they were in Vegas this week until I saw a couple of your tweets
okay, so
yesterday.
that goes to my previous point.
Yeah.
Is you're a sports fan, you follow golf more than 99% of people, and you didn't even know. How are the old
surprised
set
they
in
were
their
playing
ways?
2 weeks back to back.
Yeah,
right off the bat, I didn't expect that. And listen, you made a great point, having been at Radio Row before. I mean, you're exactly right. If they don't have John Rahm and Brooks Koepka and Cam Smith and a few of the other big name players running around talking to anyone that will put a microphone in their face, they're missing a massive opportunity.
It would be insane for them not to run their stars through the car wash. Everyone would literally go kiss Phil Mickelson's feet if he walked in that room to try to book him for 6 minutes, Huss. To think of the magic you'd get on like the niche sport, to let a guy like Hatton go beside Scotty Farrell and Morency for 5 minutes. I mean, yes, obviously bring them to the high end, the legacy media people, but just walk them through that room, book them across the room, put their faces out there. I mean, that to me would make sense. It's almost such common sense that if they're not doing it, I mean, I don't want to say like be like I'm not an apologist for Liv. It's growing on me in some ways. I made the point to Pat. Every event, Hustler kind of feels like the Century Tournament of Champions. Like it's like a nice field. It's like it's exhibition, but not exhibition. Like that is sort of what I would comp it to. It's competitive, but is it competitive? Like, you know what I'm saying? I think anyone who follows golf sort of sees where I'm going with that comp. But yeah, if they're not doing the car wash, like, who cares if they need a half day of practice? Boys, you're all headed over to Radio Row. Literally, all of you.
And I would imagine that they've got a little bit better of a hold on mandatory attendance for things, the way things are setting up with Liv. Oh. Hey, speaking of that, for folks that have either checked out or are sick of it, that are sort of, I mean, there's a lot of golf fans that are like, hey, listen, wake me up when the majors are on. Can you give us a layman's update on where this all stands? PGA just got $3 billion from some equity firm. What does that mean for them going forward? And did John Rahm just take the money, but he's stuck playing 54-hole hitting giggles that he was not too keen with, but hoped that they would change?
So, by all accounts, Hustler, and I'm a pessimist. There's people that are optimists that think this short-term pain will be long-term gain for all of us. I look at it like I really just want the PGA and Liv to merge. It looks like that isn't as close to happening. By all accounts, it seems like Tiger Woods has actually played a really big role in that. In his sort of advancement back into tour advisory led to obviously getting a lot of this capital. I'm skeptical of this capital. This capital is like led by John Henry, the guy who owns Fenway Sports. Go talk to Red Sox fans about how they feel John Henry is cared about sports fans. You know, I know Arthur Blank has good concession prices, but I don't know. I'm very pessimistic. All I know right now is Patrick Cantley secured some generational wealth. Like, how am I supposed to feel? Like, I'm so torn up about it. I truly believe as someone that like could buy into the narrative that they were selling us, it almost feels like all of the events, like building up stuff like Bay Hill, Memorial, like these events to feel important, now just feels like nothing's important anymore. The majors truly just win. The majors are, if they're true, the places where we get it, it's really all I'm looking forward to. Obviously, outside of betting, and I can enjoy watching any golf event, watching players hit golf shots, that are important to them. And that doesn't mean like the Nick Taylor moment isn't iconic, or like Max Homa winning in like Riviera isn't iconic, both to like personally and on levels for community. But I think just nothing matters. Like nothing really matters anymore.
Hey, dude, I'm just looking ahead. Super Bowl next year in New Orleans. I think we all need to plan to set up shop on the row and spend a week down in Cajun country.
I would love that, Huss. I would love that. And it seems like Vegas has been a success so far. That's certainly going to be like in an every 5-year rotation as well. I've never been in New Orleans. My wife was so mad that I didn't take us there before our third child. Now she feels like she'll never go. I'm like, it's not going anywhere, so hopefully it doesn't fall into the ocean.
How will she like it when you go with the fellas for Super Bowl week?
Yeah, exactly. So no, I need, that's a place like, I don't know, I'd love to get there. So Super Bowl New Orleans would be great.
Well, let's start working on that. The Mayo Media Network, I think myself, Dusty, will try and make that happen, because that Super Bowl week in New Orleans for the Ravens-Niners Super Bowl was, I mean, it was so much fun. And one of the coolest places you can go to, in addition to, of course, being there for getting ready for the big game. Listen, fill people in on where and when they can hear the content. You guys obviously have the golf, but also doing some football stuff heading into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so golf video up over at Mayo Media. I did a quicker video with Andy Lack for Odds Checker, which is up talking about this week's waste management. And by Tuesday evening, our Super Bowl preview show, which, it's one game, and we're going to talk for a long time. So if anyone who's listened before knows, you're not really listening for the most deep insights on the football game. We're just going to have a good time.
A lot of election talk going on right now.
Yes, in our own little personal orbit, we're running elections. Nothing to do with the real world. But yeah, so we have a good time over at Mayo Media. Pat and I also chatted with Richard Deitch yesterday, so that'll be showing up on the feed this week, just sort of talking about sports broadcasting, NFL media rights, all that sort of fun stuff that I'm interested in. Some people are.
Hey, if someone's firing one dart for Phoenix, who should they go on?
Sungjae Hideki Matsuyama.
Beautiful. Hideki's actually had a great start to the season.
Took two darts.
Get in there. Dude, have a great one. Enjoy the game on the weekend, and let's catch up again soon as we get into the full swing of golf season. Appreciate it, buddy.
Always a good time. Huss, I'm so jealous of what like a grown man could do with like his personal space as a 3-time Super Bowl champion. Like, I mean that. Like, so I'm just have a good one, buddy.
Fingers are crossed.
Good luck. Hope the doctor delivers a clean, healthy baby for you.
Appreciate it. There's Geoff Fienberg. Check him out the Mayo Media Network. All right, great stuff with my guy Fienberg. Always love chopping it up with Geoff. And while we were speaking with Geoff, some more. Remo, get the sounder ready. I think we need the sounder.
Oh, okay. Let me get it ready. Hold on.
There's so much happening right now. WSTers for the first time in twice in one day. It's time for some breaking news on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
We've got breaking news. We've got breaking news.
Well, gang, Kyle Walters has done it again. Just as I was saying, Bomber fans needed to be prepared that with the big deal signed by Brady Oliveira, that it would be likely Dalton Schoen would be plying his trade elsewhere. We take an L on that one, but a big win for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because Dalton Schoen is back in blue and gold, signing a 1-year deal. This news just breaking over the course of the last 15 or so minutes. Hammer suggesting that things were working in a positive direction. And now, Reem, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers announced that Dalton Schoen is back. So Brady back and Dalton Schoen back in one day. The two priority signings of the offseason for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers aren't going anywhere. Yeah, hit the buzzer.
Yeah, it's time for the goal horn to be lit up. And we talked about this saying, it's not possible they signed both of them. Is it Brady or is it Dalton? Pick one. We're like, well, could they pull off Kevin Cheveldayoff like move where you signed both of them on the same day? And shout out to the Bombers for doing it on a weekday, not on a holiday
during the show.
Yeah, during the show, holiday Monday. So well done to the Bombers here. But I mean, got to be really exciting to have both these guys back and thinking about what this offense could produce here with the receivers Schoen, Dembski, Lawler, Strevler, and Oliveira in the mix. A lot of excitement I'm seeing in chat, a lot of excitement on social media. And as far as the dollars, I see Geoff and John Hodge are on this one. Jeff Hamilton saying 1-year deal for Schoen comes in around $230,000. Schoen was asking and likely could have got much more elsewhere. Big day for the blue and gold who signed Oliveira earlier today.
So $230 for Schoen and $230 for Brady. I mean,
yes.
And I have a feeling both of these guys and their representatives were, calling for what they would like to get. It's pretty clear that the Bombers had been working hard on this, and now we got to a point where they could see what else is out there. Kyle Walters and his management team was able to get basically, you just made the comparison to Kevin Cheveldayoff. I mean, listen, they're not 7-year deals. The contracts are very different in the Canadian Football League, but the exact same way that the Winnipeg Jets on the same day signed Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele to identical contracts. Brady's got a second year, but for this coming year, Oliveira, Schoen, both getting big raises at the same number at $230,000. And obviously this is going to stress some other areas. They're going to need to get younger. They're going to need to get cheaper in a few spots. But man, I mean, you think about who's coming back to this Bomber offense in Schoen, in Oliveira, and adding Chris Streveler as another wrinkle in the run game. This is about as good as a Bomber fan could have possibly hoped, and dare I say, best case scenario, at least when it comes to the weapons for Zach Collaros, Buck Pierce, and that Bomber offense.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, was it a couple years ago, Kyle Walters at the Grey Cup with celebrations, like, yeah, we're gonna try to bring everyone back and do it all again, and they've done a pretty good job of that. They're losing a couple of guys, Hardrick and DeMario Houston, but this core of this team, very solid. You have to think they're contenders for the Grey Cup in the West here. Got to be very exciting, and again, kind of shaking off that Grey Cup hangover. And I see a lot of excitement in the chat and on social media building for the Bombers' upcoming season. Now that we know that the MOP candidate Brady Oliveira is back, and you have this excellent group of receivers as well. So. Really, really exciting day here for the Bombers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're going to need to find somebody to block in the place of Jamarcus Hardrick, who is reportedly on his way to Saskatchewan. Certainly, and listen, the one thing the Bombers have been great at is finding quality DBs. You think of Dietrich Nichols, DeAndre Alford. These are guys that came in on rookie CFL deals. I mean, Alford's now one of the top corners in the National Football League after doing 1 year here. They do have a great track record of filling those positions at relatively team-friendly contracts with unproven players in the Canadian Football League. But I think we all agreed it was going to be really tough to replace Brady Oliveira. And I thought, frankly, maybe even tougher to replace Dalton Schoen, especially with the connection that he has with Zach Collaros. So, there still is some work to be done, obviously, for Kyle Walters and the team moving forward. But Zach Collaros has got to be one happy man right now, knowing that both Dalton Schoen and Brady Oliveira are back in blue for another season, and in Oliveira's case, for 2 more seasons, which takes him through the Grey Cup hosting year in 2025. I know we did a Why Not question of the day earlier today on Brady for not out of court, but let's double down on this one and give us your reaction in chat to the signing of Dalton Schoen at 230. I'm just looking at a whole bunch of these chats. Oh, Spency says he's on his way to Portage in Maine. He's going streaking. And T. Willis said, breaking, Portage in Maine has been shut down due to a potential biohazard. Russ Lowen, very happy I renewed last week. Doug Phil said, get your season tickets now. And Princess Auto Stadium will be electric. B.A. Hardrick and Houston getting more than shown is really stupid. Hey, listen, we all remember where the Bombers were 5-6 years ago and how much they had to pay and overpay to get guys here. I mean, Bryant was a perfect example, albeit worth every penny. But listen, if you stink and you've missed the playoffs and there's major questions about how competitive you're going to be next year, it's going to take a little bit extra money to get guys there. And Saskatchewan has been a tire fire for the last couple seasons, and Calgary's been going in the wrong direction. So you knew that there'd be some guys from this, incredible run of Bomber teams that were going to cash in and get big money. And listen, I think there's a value in being here in Winnipeg, very clearly a value in being Winnipeg for Dalton Schoen, who, as Geoff said, took less money than he could have got elsewhere, as well as Brady Oliveira. So hell of a way to start the show, Remis, and a hell of a way to end the show for Blue Bomber fans.
Yeah, Darren Cameron does PR for the Bombers. He says, I'll let him speak on this, but the bottom line is that this guy wanted to be here. He's the absolute definition of a pro, and we are a better organization both on and off the field with him in it. Great day, hashtag for the W.
Talking about who? Oliveira or
Oh,
Schoen?
that was about Schoen. Sorry, that was about Schoen.
I love the fact you could probably say the same thing
Yeah.
about both guys. To
I
be
think
honest.
so. I mean, yeah, great day for the organization. Incredible.
Oh, good stuff. Well, I mean, can't wait to have John Hodge on tomorrow to talk about this, as well as what this means for the rest of the Bombers when it comes to free agency, and what Ted Gavaya and Danny McManus have on their desk as far as position players to replace and sign players to come to camp. We should get to the Coolbet lines today before we go, because we've got a new Jet, we've got a game tonight in Pittsburgh, and we've got a lot going on in the National Hockey League. Tonight's games include Calgary in Boston. Boston a -185 favorite. The Dallas Stars are -158 favorites in Buffalo. The Canucks are an underdog, +123 on the road against the Carolina Hurricanes, who are -145 on the money line. Panthers a big favorite against the Flyers at home. The Panthers are -198 favorites. Road dog Flyers +167. We'll finish up with the Jets Penguins game. Montreal, Washington in Washington. As Stephen Whyno said, no Kuznetsov. He's in the player assistance program. Caps -154 home faves. Just about a pick 'em between the Avalanche and Devils. Although our guy Rod Z in the Lock Shop chat said that the Avalanche are 7-0 as a favorite in the second end of back-to-backs. They're a very slight favorite tonight against the New Jersey Devils. Avs -110, Devils -106, basically a pick 'em. And then the finale, the Oilers looking for 17 in a row. Our pals from Edmonton Sports Talk are all down in Vegas at the game tonight. Edmonton -154 on the money line to make it 17 in a row. And the depleted Knights +130 at home. I got a nervous feeling for the Oilers in this game. Although, Vegas is still without Theodore and without Jack Eichel, so probably a tall task. They were playing quite well going into the break. We'll see if they're ready to break the streak tonight. But let's get to Winnipeg and Pittsburgh. And the Jets are a very slight underdog in this game at -104 on the money line. The Penguins are at -113. But let's get to the props, because I'm looking at player goals here, and the newest member of the Winnipeg Jets coming in at some real nice value. +420 to score in his debut for the Winnipeg Jets is Monahan. Like, Jesse Puljujarvi is +410. Monahan's playing with Ehlers and Perfetti. He's going to be on the #1 power play unit. I'm not sure we've seen a juicy number like this in a long time, not to mention just the vibe and the karma of having a guy potentially score in his first game.
Yeah, I agree with you. The pure vibes play, but also from a numbers perspective, he's playing power play 1. If you can get a guy in power play 1 playing in his spot in the bumper, +420, sure, go for it. I mean, it's just, I think from a math perspective, it's a pretty good play. So pick them, the Jets to win, and I'm sure we'll all have a nice celebratory show here tomorrow starting at 1 p.m.
Yeah, well, and listen, with Monahan at +420, you can roll it up with the Jets win and smoke the WST exclusive, which involves the Winnipeg Jets. You just got to go to load more, because we got a whole bunch of exclusives today. But if you go to the bottom, the WST parlay is Monahan to score and the Jets to win. And again, that's a money line bet. They can win in a shootout. They can win in overtime. That is in at +575. At the top of the exclusives, we stayed away from the Jets and Oiler game for our partner parlay tonight. But we did get, as I said, we hit that +400 one yesterday with the Islanders and the Rangers. Tonight, we're taking the Avalanche. We're rolling with Rod Z's great number, the tremendous information in Jersey. And again, no Jack Hughes right now. It's Vanacek and a guy I had never heard of before, Remis. Have you ever heard of Justus Annunen?
What team is that?
He's the goalie for the Avalanche.
Never heard of him.
He's played one game so far this year, 23 games in the minors for the Colorado Eagles.
Crazy.
1 win, 4 goals against, 900 save percentage. So he's in tonight. But Vanacek's been a little shaky. So we're going to ride with the Avalanche in New Jersey. We're taking the Hurricanes at home against the Canucks, who had a very, very busy All-Star weekend with 4 of their top players there. And the Bruins to beat Calgary. When we put this in manually, if you do that manually, it's plus 397. The Lock Shop Partner Parlay Boost is up to plus 450. So jump on that if you haven't already. And good luck tonight. And Remo, we got to get this show up because with an early game, people are going to want to be checking out if they weren't able to join us live before the puck drops just after 6.
Yes, 6 o'clock puck drop. Jets in Pittsburgh. Finally, I got my whole night figured out here. It's been weird, man. The last however many days with no hockey on. Very strange. So, we were able to pump out some quality YouTube videos talking about transactions, but now tomorrow talking about actual games being played. Curious how they look back from the break. Get a look at the new look power play with Sean Monahan, the new second line center as well. Very exciting. And yeah, and we get maybe a preview of Saturday's game here.
Today is just a day about being back. Brady Oliveira back. Dalton Schoen back. The Jets back in action. And don't forget the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl. We'll hit some more Super Bowl over the next few days as well. But a huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen every day. By the way, wrestling fans, AEW fans, make sure to be subscribed to the newsletter. Remo's going to be firing something out about your chance to win tickets to AEW April 10th at Canada Life Center. We're also going to be doing a special contest for a pair of floor seats for the biggest AEW fan. Stay tuned to the show for information on that. But they're in right now. We've already had a couple winners. I know Mary Jane won right when they went in on Beat the Box Office, but more chances to win. We're trying to focus maybe live show giveaways probably on Wednesdays, the day of AEW, which airs, of course, on TSN2. But you can check that out tomorrow. Join us tomorrow. And stay tuned for your chance to win with us live on YouTube. But make sure to sign up for the newsletter for your chance to win in another way to join the WST gang down at AEW Wrestling in Winnipeg on April 10th. A huge thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Of course, Sport Manitoba and the gang at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. We will have another It Takes a Community to Play segment a little later on this week. But everyone that's been with us, shout out to all the feedback on the Not AutoCorp Why Not question of the day today, and all of you for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up. Another huge show today. Everyone's fired up for the big Bomber signings and the Jets to drop the puck tonight. Enjoy this evening's tilt. We'll be here to break it down tomorrow, the latest on CFL free agency, and the Jets on their way to Philly tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks for being with us, everyone.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.